We listen to all of our voices, great frogs and others, the best of who we are as a species, as a nation, as an imperial experiment, as an imperial democracy. And yet, as my dear sister Marianne says, recognize that there's the best in America that has always understood that if our lives matter, if Black lives matter, we're going to have to make sure that democratic practices and orientations and means of being in the world are reproduced and expanded. If any lives matter, you're going to have major radical democracy. But can you have radical democracy in America without empire, without white supremacy, without male supremacy, without transphobia, without homophobia, without losing sight of the humanity of Muslims and Jews and Arabs? It's an unanswered question. We just don't know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Radical Democracy. I am your host, Kamali Rose, and it is great to have you with me here today. It is Monday, September 14th, 2020, we have a lot to get to today. It's going to be there should be an interesting show for you. Let's jump right into it. So first and foremost, right off the top, just want to do a bit of housekeeping here and give a shout out. Always like to look out for our comrades, and I just want to give a massive shout out here to our comrades who look out for us as well in our Patreon patron community, and just giving a shout out to our a longtime patron, but now has upgraded their Patreon support. So shout out to Mark McKeever. Thank you so much for upgrading the membership on Patreon. Thank you to everyone that supports us that way. It really is what fuels us here and what allows us to keep the show existing and growing. So if you haven't already, please sign up for membership on Patreon, and we now have a $5 tier on Patreon where you'll get access to our Discord server if you join for the $5 tier. Anyone that was already a Patreon patron before then has been grandfathered in, but moving forward, $5 and up will get you access to our Discord server, and we'd love to have you in there and chat with us, join us over there. So we've got a lot to get to, and that's if you want to support us, patreon.com/radical democracy. There's always links in the description box below, so on all the videos that we post, so you can just open up that description box right now if you want to support, and head over to patreon.com/radical democracy, and whatever you can afford, we appreciate it. Whatever you can afford, it really goes a long way, and we deeply appreciate it. So thank you so much for that support. And you can also leave us a one-time tip. You don't have to sign up for any account at ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/radical democracy. So please support the show. We need your support. We are not corporate media. We are independent media, and the only way we survive is with the support of the community. So we don't have any corporate advertisers or any backing like that, because we don't want to be beholden to that. We want to be able to speak truth to power. So please enable us to do so, and to continue to do so by supporting the show whatever way you can. And if you can't support us financially, in these times, that is totally understandable. No shame in that. We appreciate you being here with us. And if you can, please do me a favor and immediately hit the like button, right down there somewhere, subscribe, and share this video out on social media, wherever you can, to let folks know and to help us grow this channel. So actually some exciting news in the channel, in the growth of the channel here. We actually have hit the 1,100 subscriber mark. So we crossed 1,100 subscribers. We had moved our channel over to this, I merged two of my channels together, and I have been, ever since then, we started around 1,000 subscribers. We lost a few when we merged the channels, and we've made up for that and then some. And so now we've made up another, at our old channel, we had about 100 subscribers. Now on this new channel, we've added another 100 subscribers. So shout out to everyone that is a part of that, to everyone who has subscribed so far. Thank you to all of you for helping this channel to grow. And so we are at 1,100 now. We've crossed the 1,100 mark, but it's no stopping here. We are on the road to 2,000 and then to 5,000 and beyond. And so please support us along the way. We need all the support we can get to grow. So thank you so much for being here. All right. Like I said, we got an exciting show planned today. We also have a live stream tomorrow for the Delaware Senate primary results. So please join us for that as well. It's going to be from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to have Zach and Gavin from the Vanguard and the Vanguard blog on to chat about the race between Jessica Scarane and Chris Coons, as well as some of their thoughts on her chances. You know, we'll be there watching as the results begin to roll in those primaries, and we'll react live, and then also maybe discuss some third-party politics, third party versus, you know, reforming the Democratic Party, and as well as just you know, some thoughts on Nina Turner and some recent news that we hope to cover as our first story here. So let's get to it. First up today, our first story is I just wanted to kick off with some positive news to start the show. So there was Nina Turner, Senator Nina Turner, recently made an appearance on TYT, and she dropped a little bit of news. So let's check that out, and then we'll come back and discuss.
Are you thinking about 2024?
I am. I mean, there are lots of people that I hear from all the time from all over this country who want me to consider running again. It's always something that is on my list. But for this moment, I'm going to continue to help progressive candidates, progressive causes. I'm also going to continue to navigate the racial justice space. To do those things, so we need corporations to come on through. Now, they come through for themselves and the tax breaks and how they lobby Congress. We need them to come on through for the people. And there is a way to get those some of those corporations to do that, especially on the justice side. Since the killing of George Floyd, we know that a number of corporations have pledged a whole lot of money for racial justice. Let's see if they can do that. So I'm also going to put some of my talent on that side. But absolutely strong consideration for 2024, no doubt.
Okay, well, that's clear. So Nina, when you look at the difference in
All right, so that was Nina Turner, and she was just, I mean, she laid it out there pretty clearly for us. That was as clear as any politician will be about considering a run. And I know I try not to get too tied up in electoral politics. I always try to caveat that, not put all of our eggs in one basket there, and to focus on, you know, this idea of someone coming to save us. But I certainly, if anyone is going to do anything close to it, it's going to be Nina Turner, in my opinion. And so this was exciting news. I still get, I try to be a good leftist, but this stuff still gets me excited. I still got one foot in electoral politics and one foot outside of it, trying to focus on activism in other areas, democracy in the workplace. Y'all know me by now. So yeah, this was cool though. This is Nina Turner saying that she is open and considering a run for president in 2024. Now, what she didn't make clear in this interview was whether she would be running as a People's Party candidate or as a Democratic Party candidate. I know some of my thoughts on that is, you know, I believe that she could. I think that as much as I came out here during the People's Convention, I said, listen, I want to, I threw it out there, the idea of a Nina Turner, leading the ticket for People's Party, I think that would be their best bet. I think that's their best hope. But I certainly I'm always talking about wanting to win. That's the goal here, is for the left to win. I want the left to win. And in order to do so, I still haven't yet figured out I'm still figuring out what the best strategy is moving forward, and how I plan to focus my energy for the coming years as far as electoral politics is concerned, how much of my time is spent there, and then where my time is spent there. And so honestly, again, I try not to idolize anyone or anything like that, but I do believe that Nina Turner is the type of person, the type of voice that can lead a movement right now, and that is leading a movement right now. And I would be supportive of honestly anything that whatever she decided to do, I would be supportive of. So if Nina Turner says she wants to run People's Party, I'll be supportive of it. If Nina Turner says that she wants to run in the Democratic Party in 2024, I'll be supportive of it, honestly, because she knows better than I do. I would certainly defer to her on this. She knows much better than I do. She's somebody that's been in politics and is fighting on that side, and also shares all my values. And so I can't think of a better representative of my values in politics. And so I would be really excited to see a Nina Turner 2024 run. And I think that a lot of people would, across the left spectrum. Even I think that she's a CNN correspondent, like she does the mainstream news circuit as well. She can make appearances on MSNBC. She's not completely shunned by the establishment, but when she goes, she doesn't hold back. She reminds me of a Cornel West, who is just never, they're just truth tellers, and they can't hold back. And so when you can cross that truth telling with still being an astute politician and an effective politician, then I think that is, and she has all the identity and the will. That's another thing, like having the will to do this. Some people talk about AOC 2024. We need to just dead that conversation right now. It literally cannot happen. She will not be old enough. So let's not waste any time on that conversation. AOC cannot run in 2024. Let's get past that, folks. Like, that's, fantasy world. It's just, there are very few rules for what you need to be able to run for US president. And one of the only, I think, 3 rules are you have to be over age 35. And I checked, and right now, unfortunately, I think it's 35 by the time you're inaugurated. I believe, unfortunately, AOC will not be there. So we cannot, that's just not a realistic plan for us. So we gotta have a better plan moving forward. And so, I think that what we should, what a viable strategy would be for Nina Turner to run in the, Democratic Party, potentially get all the recognition that goes along with that. And then if she feels like if the Democratic Party, if she's not able to get, and honestly, for now, I'll say, if she's not able to get a fair shot through the Democratic Party, if they play that same shit, if they do what they did to Bernie Sanders, and they come and Obama plays behind the scenes, or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden comes behind the scenes, and they convince some establishment Democrats to go drop out and join forces and turn into one super neoliberal, like Megatron, corporatist, if they pull some shit like that, or they do anything like that, like any shenanigans with the DNC, super delegates, anything like that, they play any games with the Democratic Party, then you say, listen, just like Donald Trump did this, he did it so effectively. And he said, listen, if the Republicans, if you dare to try anything funny with me, I will run third party, he said. And so they were too afraid. But and they felt the reality of that threat. And so they didn't mess around, and they let him have his fair shot through their process, even though they tried everything they could, from the establishment perspective, to stop him. Initially, folks were not on board. A lot of the biggest donors to his campaign were funding, like Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush and other folks. And so people came around eventually, but initially they didn't want Trump running, but he threatened them. He said, listen, if y'all try anything with me, fuck around and find out. He was like, fuck around and find out. And they did not fuck around. So if we want the same sort of treatment, we got to have somebody that's willing to stand up. And I know Nina Turner, she won't play those games. She doesn't play that, she will call that type of stuff out. And so if she said, just give her, if she has a fair shot, whatever. And then, but otherwise, she could just accept the People's Party nomination. If they mess around, she's just like, listen, I'll be willing to accept the People's Party nomination. I will run in the general election. Now, I would also accept if Nina Turner just wants to run in the People's Party and just run outright in the People's Party. I will support her too. I will support that. I will be very supportive. I will be donating. I will be supporting. I will be volunteering. I will be making phone calls. I will be knocking on doors for her, whatever she wants to do, honestly, because as far as electoral politics is concerned, I do have a lot of trust in her in that sense. And I would, respect whatever strategy she, decides to undertake. And so I'm not going to doubt that. So real quick, just one correction I want to make is that Mark McKeever says, you know what, I checked and I might have gotten our birthday wrong. So I must have gotten our birthday wrong. So Mark McKeever says AOC would be eligible in 2024 by turning 35 on October 13th, 2024. But Nina has way more experience. So thank you for the correction there, Mark. I thought that I had checked this, I probably did it wrong because it was a quicker thing and it was in passing. I got a different comment in another stream and I checked it quickly on stream. And so, you know what? I was probably wrong there. I stand corrected. I will check into that, Tammy. If you can just confirm AOC's birthday for me. Okay, Tammy did. So, all right. Thank you, Mark, for the correction. So that is correct. AOC could run. I stand corrected. Now, I would be down for a Nina AOC ticket. Like that would be so, oh boy, don't get me going. So if y'all want to get me excited for electoral politics, run a Nina Turner AOC ticket and you'll see what type of, how geeked I can get. So, all right. So thank you for the correction, Mark. Appreciate that. Shout out again to Mark McKeever for bumping up that Patreon subscription. We appreciate that. We appreciate your support, Mark. Thank you so much. All right. So shout out. All right. So yeah, if Nina Turner decided to run in the People's Party, she wanted to support the People's Party. She felt like there was no hope for the Democratic Party. Honestly, I would support that run as well and would support her there. But if she does decide to run in the Democratic Party, I do believe that could be. I still have I'm holding on to some belief still that the Democratic Party, we might need to have that strategy of being able, and I guess I'm hedging my bets here, and maybe it's hedging my bets, but I honestly just don't know which way is the right way right now. I can't call it definitively. A third party move right now versus Democratic Party reform. I just want to, I plan to try to, have a dual strategy of trying to support both while also, having a sort of triangular strategy of also trying to have, a foot definitely firmly outside of electoral politics, a focus. You cannot focus entirely on electoral politics. We keep on saying it, that these politicians are not going to come save us. And if we keep on waiting around forever for them to save us, like we will die of old age. And we will die with no pension and no homes to stay in. And it will be a very sad existence. So let's not do that. And let's not wait around for capitalists to come save us. This is why Richard Wolff and others advocate for building democracy in the workplace and making the fundamental change there, because you can fight and beg these people for little scraps of what we call democracy now, this idea that we get to go and vote every 4 years for people who don't represent us like that. I don't know how much we've been doing the lesser of two evils voting for the past, for my entire lifetime, literally my entire lifetime. And I've been told about the safe, the electable option, all this stuff over and over. We've been doing electability politics and all this, and we keep on getting the same outcomes. And so I don't know. I'm getting to the point where I'm almost at my I'm almost at the point where I'm just like the Democratic Party may be too far gone, and I see folks like Cornel West taking that position. So Nina Turner floating it out there, she could run. She didn't say definitively whether she would run in the Democratic Party or in the for running under a People's Party. I honestly think she could run a sort of dual strategy there and run within the Democratic Party. And if they try any BS, just accept the People's Party nomination. People do that all the time with, like, not necessarily, but like the Workers' Party in New York. They just like they just give the nomination to somebody. Like, the people typically don't run for that party. They don't run under that party, but the Workers' Party will be like, we nominate this candidate, and they'll just be on the ticket as that, under that party, but same person. So they, the votes count up for that person or whatever. And so it's essentially their way of like endorsing them. And so I do think that would be an interesting ticket, to say the least. And I think that has the best chance as a winning ticket for progressives. We have to come and challenge Kamala Harris or whoever it's going to be. It's likely to be Kamala Harris in 2024. We cannot just step aside and let them just continue to destroy the country, and we're just gonna not fight on that front, period. No, I think that we got to try to fight on that front, and I think that Nina Turner would be a great candidate to lead on that front. So, all right, let me quickly, before we jump into our next story. So, just a bit of good news. I just wanted to share that I'm going to have Gavin and Zach from the Vanguard on the show tomorrow. And they did a video on Nina Turner 2024. And I got a chance to watch that. And it was Zach who actually, I had jotted the note, Dem versus MPP or both. And then when he pointed out he made the point that she could run, and then if they try any BS, then you can accept the People's Party nomination. Honestly, I was just totally fine with her just running, and no matter what, if she doesn't win the nomination, I would be okay with her just taking the People's Party nomination and just doing that, or running under the People's Party the entire time. Like, honestly, it's whatever Nina wants to do, Nina can do. Like, she earned that. Whatever she wants to do, she can do it, and she's going to get my support because of the way that she is just out there fighting the good fight. And you saw in that clip, she talks about how she still plans to fight for progressives and fight for racial justice and fight on those fronts. And you can always count on her to do that. So let me we'll keep pushing along. Tammy, do we have any comments that we want to get to before I kick off the next story, or we'll just keep trying along? Okay, we can take a comment. All right, so Dark Sage 9117 says, I have an interesting political question for you. Interesting. Okay. Dark Sage 9117 says, there is a big discussion today about the need to move towards more clean energy solutions and eliminate the use of things like oil and coal. While I agree with the need to move towards clean energy, would it not be wiser to harness all kinds of different energy while trying to make coal and oil as safe and clean as possible? I don't think that based on how much energy is available, like, nobody thinks that we're going to get rid of oil and coal right now. And then a lot of clean energy efforts are going to require the burning of fossil fuels in the production of those clean energy efforts. Like, so we're going to need to, drive trucks that aren't electric cars, in electric trucks. We're going to have to drive around fossil fuel burning vehicles to deliver these parts and these materials around the country. So we're going to have to burn fossil fuels. There's no way around that. Obviously, the goal is to limit it as much as possible and to shift as rapidly as possible to clean energy. And I don't know anyone that's saying we have to, snap our fingers and it has to stop immediately. But it is that we've done so much damage, and there's not a lot of time left. And we're talking like we have tons of time left, but the IPCC, like a international group of scientists whose entire focus is climate change. That's the CC and climate change in IPCC. All right. So it's climate change. These scientists are all focused on climate change. And they say, listen, They crunched the numbers, they looked at all the data, and they said in 2017, they said we have 12 years left to make radical change, or we are going to do irrevocable damage to the country and to the planet. I'm sorry, not to the country, but to the planet. And so it is absolutely dire. You're talking about 2017. That gives us until 2029. We're not, Joe Biden has said he's not going to ban fracking, and that he's already shown hostility to young folks, and young folks are leading the climate movement right now with like the Sunrise Movement. And that entire generation is leading on climate change right now. And Joe Biden has already shown a hostility to younger folks, that he doesn't intend to listen to these folks. Look at what came out of he had these task forces that he did, Joe Biden, where they were talking about, they had one on climate change. They did not endorse a Green New Deal. They do not, they've shown no intention other than signing back into the Paris Climate Agreement, which has already been said it does not go nearly far enough. So what we're talking about is we need much more dramatic change than what we're even thinking about right now, looking at local sustainability efforts like that. But I don't think you just get rid of coal production overnight or anything like that. But yes, we do need to rapidly and dramatically move away from coal and oil and natural gas as quickly as we can, and shift to clean, sustainable energies, because it's that, or we literally leave an uninhabitable planet to the next generation. And somebody pointed out that we didn't, it's not just that you inherit the earth from your ancestors, but you're also borrowing it from future generations. Like, we are borrowing this earth from future generations right now. And that's the focus that we need to be having. And so, yes, of course, we're going to have to use some of those fossil fuels, these dirty fuels, in getting towards clean energy, but the move has to be towards clean energy. And there are enough jobs to go around, and there's plenty of, solar energy. The sun is pitching out literally nuclear bombs worth of energy at us that we are not harnessing every single day that we could be. And so there's a lot more to gain from that if we just didn't have the political corruption of the fossil fuel industry in this country. We could actually make some real progress. But we're over here, we unfortunately have to debate these little finer points when we need much more drastic changes than what we're even thinking of. So Dark Sage says, I live in Pennsylvania, and this is a huge coal producing state. I do understand oil and coal and finite resources, and one day they will run out. That is inevitable, but cannot harness all kinds of different energy sources while making sure people who work in drilling and coal mines still have a job. See, the thing is, like, we can't just think of if you look at Bernie Sanders' transition to clean energy and the Green New Deal, they were talking about a 5-year transition for anybody working in the coal industry. They're talking about giving you 5 years full pay. And if you're older, they will pay for retirement. And I know that's not some people want to work and you don't want to be forced into retirement. Cool. But you know what? At some point, we decided that there couldn't be any more, we got rid of whole industries, right? We got rid of industries like we invented the car. You got rid of the horse and buggy, right? Nobody came around and said, "Oh no, what are we gonna do with all the horse, the buggy drivers? Like, what's gonna happen to all the buggy drivers? Are we just gonna throw them out of work?" Well, that's what technological advancements do. But I'm not callous, and I'm not saying it, F those people. Hell no. Like, I don't want to leave any working class person behind. I want people to be able to lead meaningful lives. People need to be able to recognize that you're not leading them. One, those jobs are dangerous as hell. Like, the coal jobs they don't pay these people nearly enough. They end up getting all kinds of health risks as well. All kinds of health risks, black lung in coal mines. And so these miners end up dying of cancer. Pennsylvania, West Virginia. This is not, it's not a healthy job. It's not a dignified job, because they're not paid enough, and they're not paid nearly enough. So they're not paid really a dignified wage either. And so, no, I think that they could absolutely get. There's a just transition that we can have, where you have 5 years to to transition off with full pay. Listen, I'm unemployed right now. Like my job got taken away from me and I didn't get a 5-year transition plan. Like nobody gave me a 5-year transition plan. Now, again, I'm not saying that I don't want working people to have it. I'm not saying because I didn't have it, nobody should have it. No. I'm saying, I get it. I get what it's like to not have a safety net. And so I do not want to leave any working class person without a safety net. I certainly don't. That's why I advocate things like a universal basic income and things like that. And I still recognize the fact that people still have this innate desire to work, to feel a sense of meaning. But I would argue that if you're destroying the planet, that is not a meaningful job that you're doing right there. And there are better jobs. We could give those people jobs building infrastructure in the community. If you could be building infrastructure, building new green infrastructure, building new green homes, ending homelessness. And if you knew that you were building the homes to end homelessness in your state, in your country, would that not feel like a more meaningful job? And you could get all kinds of training and it's still handiwork. You still get to feel like a man. And you get all the masculine shit behind it. And so you get all that, right? You get that sort of stuff where it's like you work with your hands and of course, I'm being slightly facetious here, but people, that's a lot of the they say the meaning behind it, and not to be like, obviously women work, do hard labor that I don't do. I'm over here, I'm a software engineer. There are plenty of women and non-binary folk doing much more serious physical labor than myself. And so, I kid here, but so I think that we can absolutely look out for those folks and look out for their jobs and not just leave them flat on their face, but also provide them with jobs that provide dignified living wages, guaranteed jobs. That's what a federal jobs guarantee would at least do. And we did this under FDR, and we built the dopest infrastructure in this country. We built it under that FDR, why would we not? That New Deal, it was the New Deal economics. And that's where you see things like the Golden Gate Bridge and all these big, massive pieces of infrastructure that are still standing today and are starting to, our infrastructure is starting to crumble around us. And so we could be building these things. We could be building, right now, we need people. There's restaurants that small businesses, local restaurants are failing right now. And what we could be doing, what the government could have stepped in and done, and they've done in other countries, is to step in and say, you know what, we're going to put people to work building new infrastructure so that these multiple restaurants can combine together sort of into these, open areas and build the infrastructure that we need to have safe jobs under a pandemic. There are all people there's tons of people that could be put to work right now. And they don't need to be doing something where they're risking their life and destroying the planet, all for less than a living wage. So I don't think that those are great jobs, and those, and so I would like to see people be given, better jobs, a fair, just transition, plenty of time to transition off, to develop a new trade, to learn a new trade. And if they want to, or if they're getting older, getting up there in age, like retire and relax. You did your part for society, and you deserve a decent, retirement. And so I want you to have a retirement that you can enjoy the work that you've done. And so that's my take on that. Dark Sage says, I break with many Democrats on this issue, but I believe very passionately about it. I would hate to see people lose the job they have. But again, I understand the need to go in a more environmentally friendly direction. But I think we need to take a different approach to this topic rather than trying to do one or the other. Yeah, I think that there's a rift. Democrats, neoliberals are going to be different than folks that are firmly on the left on this, and will say, no, it's not acceptable. I don't want anyone losing a job in that sense. But also, you can't have jobs that threaten people, right? That endanger people, that end up hurting people in those very communities. Like, I don't want people to have jobs that kill them with cancer. If that's the job, I'm not fighting for that job to stick around. I want those people to be made whole. I want those people's lives to be kept whole, but I do not want those jobs to stick around. So we gotta be fighting for better jobs, healthier jobs, that are meaningful jobs. And I'm not just gonna keep a job around like that. People also make this argument about the health insurance industry. Like, no, I'm not going to argue to keep the health insurance industry around so that we can keep a handful of people in jobs when those jobs are actively harming the rest of us. So we gotta be fair in that. And also that's what community is, right? We should get together and we should all have a say in that as a democracy to say, listen, you doing that job over there is affecting me in the community, right? Because if you see some of these, in Oklahoma, when they started fracking and pumping the wastewater into the ground, the earthquakes went from like something like 1 to 2, like one earthquake every few years in Oklahoma to all of a sudden in 2015, like under Obama, earthquakes all of a sudden we had more earthquakes in Oklahoma than in California. In like 2014, 2015 under Obama, we had more earthquakes in Oklahoma than in California when they started fracking in Oklahoma. And so that's affecting the entire community. One handful of private investors and a handful of employees, they can't have all the say in deciding that they're going to do something that's going to harm the rest of us. I don't think that that's a fair job to have. And I think that we can provide people with better jobs, more meaningful jobs that don't endanger the rest of us, and do it in a dignified, fair way that doesn't leave people flat on their face, gives them plenty of transition time and a safety net. And I absolutely advocate for that. So I agree with you on that point. And that's why I think things like a universal basic income would hold people over and through situations like that, and they wouldn't feel so desperate if they had to leave a job. And so I could go on this for hours and I won't. So let me push ahead here. Dark Sage says, in regards to homelessness, yes, I would love to help build homes for those who need one, but I think as well, FEMA, Habitat for Humanity, local elected leaders, and other people could help with that as well. Make it more of a community thing. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we have more empty housing units in this country than we have homeless people. So it's not even a matter, like, we could absolutely, and we can and should build homes for people, but we have homes for people. We have the space for people. That's not the issue that's there. And homelessness is a much easier issue to solve. The problem is that capitalism, it will never be solved under capitalism. We will never solve homelessness under capitalism, because simply this is a part of it. This is a symptom of capitalism, and there's no escaping it. And so homelessness, poverty, they live in the shadow of capitalism, and you can't outrun your shadow. They're just always there. And you can't show me a capitalist system where these things haven't existed. And so how do we change that? Get rid of capitalism, the employer-employee relationship. We got to end that and move towards building democracy in our economy. And that's the real change that we have to make, according to economists like Richard Wolff. Dark Sage says, correct, medical issues like black lung is terrible, and it is an effect from coal, and you are absolutely correct in regards to it being a dirty job. You can never make it 100% clean, just like oil, but even 5 or 10 years of grace is something I oppose. I think harnessing many kinds of different energy sources while trying to make coal and oil as clean and safe as we can is the way to go. Listen, I mean, these are the debates we can have out. Certainly this is what democracy is for. It's just that I defer to the scientists on this, and in literally the people that spend their whole lives, we've decided that some of our civilians, some of our fellow compatriots, some of our fellow citizens are going to be the experts on this, and I just trust the experts on this. And the experts say, unfortunately, Dark Sage, you're wrong, and I wish it weren't so. I wish that we could do this in a way like if we could do that and everything was healthy and we could still have a leave an inhabitable planet to our children with all that, like, I'd be all for it. But the experts disagree with you, and I'm going to have to defer to the thousands of scientists that have gotten together on this and have studied this their entire lives and are warning us that the situation is more dire than the IPCC report, than the initial IPCC report, because we've not just not done anything, we've gone in the opposite direction since then and under Trump. And so Trump has only exacerbated the problem, withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord, and then just destroying the EPA and the FDA and the EPA, and there's just deregulating all of these industries. So we are heading in the opposite direction, deregulating the fossil fuel industry. We're just heading in the wrong direction, and so the situation has gotten more dire, and we have even less time. And so listen, I don't know why. I don't know why we would be so committed to an energy that we don't need, that that there are immensely more solar energy jobs than there are gas and coal combined, right? Like there are more solar energy jobs already in the country, and we could do more, and we could be on the cutting edge, and we could give people, if you've seen some of the videos of people who built the structures, the windmills and stuff, the wind turbines, if you've seen some of this, the work, and you have a sense of pride for your community. Look at, I built this thing. It's going to be there for, this infrastructure is going to last for the next 50 years, 100 years, whatever it is. And it's going to make my community healthier. It's less expensive. There's less damage to the planet. And because when we talk about, extracting coal, we're just thinking about the short-term profit while ignoring the long-term damage that it does. And that costs money. That costs trillions of dollars on the other end. And these companies aren't paying for it. We're paying for it, not just with money, but with our lives, with our health. And that's unacceptable. So I 10 years, whatever it takes, as soon as possible, we need to move away from the burning of fossil fuels and move towards sustainable green energies. And that's how it has to be in order for us to leave an inhabitable planet for the next generation. And I'm just deferring to the scientists on that. I'm no expert. I'm just deferring to the scientists on that, the experts. And of course I'll listen to people in the industry, but I have nothing but empathy for my fellow, just anybody in the working class anywhere. And so I'm certainly concerned about them. I'm certainly not saying leave them destitute or anything like that, but climate change is leaving people destitute right now. So we can leave those people with their jobs intact. But what happens when, California, or the whole West Coast, Oregon down to the southern tip of California is all on fire, and people's businesses and homes are being burned down right now. People are dying, losing their lives. Aren't we concerned about their livelihood as well, and them having jobs to keep as well? So if the coal burning over here destroys some homes over here, we gotta balance that and figure out how we can keep people in jobs that don't harm others. We should do no harm, essentially. All right, let's keep it moving. Shin Sung says hi. What's up, Shin? Shin says hi. Nice to see you, Shin. Thanks for being here. Always appreciate everyone being with us. We are going to cruise along to some. Appreciate all the love there. And we're gonna get to some more stories here. Mark McKeever says the fear now is when companies go out of business, they steal the retirement of the workforce to pay last bonuses for management. It's sickening. Yeah, they do that all the time, and that's why we can't. As long as we leave the capitalists in place, as long as we leave a handful of people, the board of directors and the major shareholders that get to make all the decisions about what to do, where to do, who gets to do it, and what gets done with all of those profits of all of our labor, as long as we leave a handful of people in charge of it, then it will continue to happen. It's not that there's just one or two bad apples or anything like that. The whole thing is rotten. The whole system is rotten. And no matter what you do, it's proven over and over and over again. Companies, worker cooperatives, when they go out of business, they don't steal the retirement to pay the bonuses for management. You know why? Because everybody has a democratic say in what goes on. You, one person, one vote. Are you going to vote to screw yourself, to give yourself less and give a manager, or not even management, but it's executives. Let's be real. It's not even the management. It's the executives that they pay. And the executives are the one that walk away with the $1 million bonuses. And why? Because the executives give the board of directors cover, right? And the board of directors gets to hire all the executives, and you get a vote on all of that. And so listen, it's one share, one vote for these people, not one person, one vote. We need to change that system. We have to change to build democratic workplaces. And that's the way we make it so that if our businesses go out of business, then you have the say. You all sit around and you decide what do we want to do here? How do we want to build this off ramp? I've seen all kinds of creative decisions out of worker cooperatives where sometimes they'll reduce their staff down to a skeleton crew and they'll still maintain ownership, shared ownership. And when things come back up, when the economy comes back up, then they come out and they come back to work. So build democratic workplaces. support this one right here by supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/radical democracy. And, thank you so much to everyone. If you're here and you haven't done so already, please immediately hit the like button. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you don't mind getting some notifications, please hit the bell to receive notifications whenever we go live or launch a new video. So I would like to cruise along. Please, if you can't support us in that way, just like, subscribe, share. Like, subscribe, share, please. All right, let's get to some more stories here. All right, sorry. I'm parched. All right, so next up, we got a bit of a somber story here. No, not a bit of, a very somber story. So let's just get this ready. All right, so just to give you the context on this upcoming story that we're going to be doing there, folks, if you're not familiar yet with the name Michael Forrest Reinoehl, I believe is the correct pronunciation. So Michael Forrest Reinoehl was a protester in Portland, Oregon. He was involved in a situation where he had come out in a person, member of a white, an organization with ties to white supremacists called Patriot Prayer. A member of that organization was shot and killed at a protest in Oregon, and they, Michael Forrest Reinoehl came out and admitted to this and said, I shot him. I shot him in self-defense. I was afraid for my life. And that, police then, he came out, he came out to a news organization. He went on camera. He admitted this. He also said that he was afraid for his life and afraid for turning himself into the police. Then days later, he was then approached by U.S. Marshals and as well as local police. He was shot and killed by police, and without ever having been given a trial. And so recently Trump came out and made some statements about this situation. And so I wanted to talk about those. Let's watch a clip here. This is from Rising, on the Hill with Krystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty. And Krystal's doing a piece here. She's going to talk for a bit about this situation and just give us a little bit of the background. And then we'll come back and we'll discuss that. All right. And some of the recent developments as well with Trump's recent statements. So let's take a look at that and come back and discuss. Sorry, give me 1 second while I cue this up. All right. Sorry, folks.
All right, so we covered here the events that led to Michael Forrest Reinoehl. He was accused of killing a Trump supporter out in Oregon a while ago, and the events that led to his death when law enforcement went to apprehend him. Now, there are some questions about how this all went down. Be really careful about this. There are eyewitnesses who say he had a gun and he fired at law enforcement officers. There's another eyewitness that says no, law enforcement officers fired at him first. Even there were multiple agencies involved in this fugitive task force when they went to apprehend him. The marshals say one thing. Police officers say something slightly different about what kind of gun he had and whether or not he ultimately fired a weapon. Okay, so that's the backstory here. President Trump went on air with Judge Jeanine over the weekend and made some outrageous comments about law enforcement's killing of Michael Forrest Reinoehl. And he also made further comments last night at his rally. Let's listen to both of those clips.
And they immediately raised their hands, and the Seattle police, who, by the way, could do a great job if they were let to do their job, but they're not. They're not. And as you know, in Portland the other day, we had to send in the U.S. Marshals, a man who's a bad guy, shot somebody right in the middle of the street, who they say was a very fine young man, shot him, killed him. Just shot him like it was on television. 2.5 days, nothing happened. I said, what's going on? We sent in the U.S. Marshals. It was taken care of in 15 minutes, okay? 15 minutes.
Sent in the U.S. Marshals for the killer, the man that killed the young man in the street. Just shot him. I mean, it was on television. Cold-blooded, killed him. He didn't like his hat, or he didn't like something, and it wasn't a Trump hat.
Right. It was peaceful.
It was
prayer.
It was a lot. It was a religious hat.
Right.
And he shot him cold blood. 2.5 days went by, and I put out, when are you going to go get him? And the U.S. Marshals went in to get him.
Good.
And in a short period of time, they ended in a gunfight. This guy was a violent criminal.
A lot of them out there.
And the U.S. Marshals killed him. And I will tell you something. That's the way it has to be. There has to be retribution when you have crime like this.
I mean, he's actively celebrating, calling it retribution, saying this is the way it has to be. The fact that law enforcement shot and killed this man as they went to apprehend him. And look, again.
All right. So that was Krystal Ball giving a bit of the background and context on that story for us better than I can. I am not a trained professional as she is. Clearly, I will get better. But, you know, she broke it down there, gave the background for it. And then also we saw 2 clips of Trump, you know, some of his quotes, he said there, like, you know, we sent in the U.S. Marshals. It was taken care of in 15 minutes. You know, he said they went on for 2.5 days. We sent in the U.S. Marshals. It was taken care of in 15 minutes. So he says we sent in the U.S. Marshals. Essentially, what you have here is the president of the United States ordering a hit on a U.S. civilian. That's what just happened here. Donald Trump ordered a hit, and he just admitted to it here. He ordered a hit on a U.S. civilian, and he just celebrated it on national television, talking about, you know, retribution. Like, are you kidding me? That's not. He talks about being law, you know, the law and order. And Krystal and Sagar went on to make this point. That's not law and order. That's not law and order. If you believe in law and order, you don't believe in extrajudicial killings. I always struggle with that word, extrajudicial killings of U.S. civilians, or any civilian for that matter. And so that's not law and order. There is a due process. The difference in the situation with the Kenosha, you know, domestic terrorist that goes and kills 2 people, shoots another one, you know, kills one person and then shoots another and kills another person that try to then step in to save other lives. And so, but he gets a trial, you know, Dylan Roof, he gets a trial. Whenever, you know, white people in this country go on shooting sprees or kill people, they seem to always find a way to get a trial. But here you have a dude who was claiming self-defense and never got a chance to argue that case in court. He never got his fair day in court. And you got the president of the United States literally like celebrating that. But how is that not an admission of guilt? How is that not ordering a hit on a U.S. civilian is murder? Like, that's murder. You had the president of the United States that just admitted to conspiring to murder a U.S. civilian. And we're seriously not we don't take issue with that. Like, folks that are on the right wing, right? Because I know when I clip this video and play this video, whenever we release this video, the clip of this video, I just check the comments on it. You'll see the right wingers will be in the comments, and they will be celebrating the death of somebody that was killed by police. They do it every time. And it's like, wait, aren't you the same folks that scream about the Second Amendment and your right to bear arms against a tyrannical government? Like, what is your excuse here? I'll show you a post that I saw from Majority Report. Let me just read this post to you as well. Check out this post here. Majority Report, I think they're referencing a Washington Post article that came out. And so let's see here. Let me just. All right. So this was posted 2 days ago by the Majority Report on YouTube. It was just a written post. And they say, the more we learn about this, the more it appears that Attorney General Bill Barr executed a man without trial last week. a witness to the police killing last week of an anti-fascist suspected of shooting a far-right militant in Portland, Oregon, say the man was carrying a cell phone and eating a gummy worm when police started shooting. The witness, Nate Dingus, who, as they'll go on to say, was an ordained minister. So the witness, an ordained minister, Nate Dingus, told the Washington Post that police did not announce themselves or try to arrest the suspect, Michael Forrest Reinoehl. The series of events has some observers calling the law enforcement action akin to an extrajudicial killing. Not akin to, it's just straight up an extrajudicial killing. Why do we have to, butter that up with, saying akin to? It's just straight up extrajudicial killing. If this happened in any other country, if this happened in Venezuela, everybody would be condemning Maduro as a dictator and a strong man and all these sorts of things. But Donald Trump does it, and no, it's akin to. No, it's just straight up extrajudicial killing. Attorney General Bill Barr called Reynolds' shooting by police a, quote, significant accomplishment, end quote. Significant accomplishment, he says. So you have the Attorney General of the Department of Justice, so to speak, saying that it is a significant accomplishment that the police went in and murdered a civilian without announcing themselves, without that civilian seemingly having posed any threat to them, and they just murdered him without any warning. And that's apparently a significant accomplishment to the Attorney General of the United States. So prior to his death last week, I'll continue reading from this post. Prior to his death last week, Reinoehl confessed on camera to Vice News that he shot Trump supporter Aaron J. Danielson at a protest on August 29th, but said he did so in self-defense. A multi-agency team of police tracked Reinoehl down at an apartment complex in Lacey, Washington, some 90 minutes drive north of Portland. I apologize for getting his location wrong. So he was in Lacey, Washington, some 90 minutes drive north of Portland. And then official details have been scarce on what exactly happened next. Let me tell you, there should have been a whole bunch of cops with a whole bunch of body cameras going, recording this situation. So the details should not be scarce. They're only scarce because they know that their details are only scarce when the cops did some sideways shit that they need to hide. That's when details get real scarce in this country. So previous accounts by neighbors said only that people heard many shots fired, but it was never clear whether Reinoehl was armed. Dingus, the witness who shared his account with Post, says he saw two unmarked police vehicles converge on Reinoehl as he walked to his car. He says officers immediately began firing, prompting Reinoehl to duck behind his car, which was blocked in by police vehicles. Dingus says he never saw Reinoehl try to get inside his car or reach for a weapon. Police paused once to shout "stop" before resuming their fire. So that means they had already started shooting, and then they yelled "stop," not even announcing that they're police. I mean, what do you assume? A bunch of people in unmarked cars roll up on you and start shooting. You tell me, right wingers, what would you do in that situation? Don't tell me that you wouldn't be screaming, "Oh, it's Antifa and I have every right to pull out a AK, and just start blasting everybody in the face." So Dingus is reportedly an ordained minister. Per his attorneys, he fears retaliation by both the far right and law enforcement for speaking out now. Local police and the U.S. Marshals declined comment to the Post on the new witness account. So local police and the U.S. Marshals declined comment to the Post on the new witness account. So this is all from the Washington Post article there, and they AG Barr. So that's, this is what we know of it. And if this happened, I just don't know how anyone could look at this and not feel like this is, whether this was a right winger that this happened to or a left winger. Like, you should have the same analysis here. It should be the same analysis, so that the person at least at the very least deserves a trial, right? They didn't appear to pose any threat. He was apparently on his phone and eating a gummy worm before police rolled up on him unannounced and started shooting. Like, come on, if you're okay with that on the right, if you're okay with that, if you're going to celebrate that, then you don't have any principles. You lack any principles. You have no core principles, because just, again, replace the person with a right winger. And would you say that was that person, same exact situation, all other things, just literally replace the person in your mind with a right winger? That's all you got to do. And tell me if you feel the same. So And I just know that they're not principled on this. It's just about having this deep-seated, you know, fascistic love of police, this authoritarian love of police that you really need to check out, because it doesn't square with your love of the Second Amendment and supposed, you know, willingness to rise up against a tyrannical government. If you don't consider extrajudicial killings by the state a tyrannical government, then you're warped. You're warped. So yeah, I just wanted to, you know, this was a messed up, just a gross situation that I want to make sure that I covered, because we got to make sure that we don't let this stuff. I don't see it being covered on mainstream news. Luckily, it gets covered here by The Hill, and Krystal and Saga are usually solid on things like this. And so definitely shout out to that you know, show there. They do some decent work there. And they at least cover these things that don't get a lot of coverage on the MSNBCs and CNNs of the world, and they don't get covered on the Fox Newses in the right light. That's always, oh, look at this monster. You had Trump sitting there talking about, you know, he shot someone, talking about Reinoehl saying he shot someone, and this is just Trump declaring it as if he knows he shot someone who they said was a very fine man. The dude was, again, part of what is the ACLU has declared a white supremacist aligned group. And I've read accounts from people that are in Oregon, and I read an account from somebody that lives in Oregon who says, listen, they were born and raised in Oregon, and summertime used to be a time of happiness, and the fair used to come to town, and it was a really happy time. And starting back a few years ago, all of a sudden it became a hot spot for, you know, because it's a little blue, you know, oasis, they call it, in a sea of red, you know, and it's this little blue island in a sea of red, that it gets a lot of people from outside of the city that come in, and they come into the city, and literally like right-wing, you know, white supremacist militia groups coming out there, and they've come into town and they've beat up locals. They've broken someone's neck. They've broken vertebrae in someone's back. They've killed people. They've killed locals. So they come from out of town. So, you know, any right winger would say, you gotta be able to defend your land, defend your town, defend your land, right? Like, these are the locals are defending their land from these people. They're trying to defend themselves from these outsiders coming in. Shouldn't you be able to get right with this? Like, this is your whole ideology, is like, this is what y'all believe, right? On the right is like, you got to keep these outsiders. They're coming in and they're transgressing on our land and trespassing on our land is your whole thought, right? And you got a right to defend your property, and that's what these people are doing, right? This their town, their community, and they're trying to defend it. And these, you know, these people from outside of the city come in and bring violence into their city. Come on, if you just reverse the roles in this, right wingers would, just like that, they would flip their whole. If this was Antifa coming in from out of town into some conservatives, you know, little safe hold somewhere, they would, you know, their brains would explode. If Antifa was coming in, breaking people's necks, murdering people, come on, this is what they all like fantasize about, like, you know, but it's not the reality. And this is what's really happening. When it really happens, and it happens on the other side, they have nothing to say. And so this is a president, a sitting president of the United States, ordering a hit on a U.S. civilian and then admitting to it on national television, and it's just sort of been breezed on by. And I think that's that it deserves a lot more attention than what it's getting. And you just had, you know, it's just it's hypocrisy, because when the tables are turned, they are, you know, are totally up in arms, no pun intended, about you know, it's the, you know, the Antifa, and they're so dangerous, and you got to defend yourself, and you have a right to defend yourself, and this, that, and the next thing. And like, this dude came out and said that he was afraid for his life. He was willing to go through the process and try to clear his name. He came out and said, listen, it was self-defense. Why doesn't he doesn't he deserve his day in court? Shouldn't you? Isn't that law and order? If you believe in law and order, shouldn't you believe in that? So, all right. Do we have any comments we want to get to?
This one's a little bit old.
Shin says, aren't companies legally required to give their employees severance pay? No, not at all. Absolutely not. Companies are not required by law to do that. Brian goes, thank you, Brian. Always dropping some economic knowledge. Brian, what's your background? Do you have a background in economics, by the way? I see you seem to either, some legal or economic background. You definitely seem to be well-versed in your stuff. And so Brian says severance pay, automatic huge payment when you lose a job you had for a long time is very rare in the US, but not in other countries by law. New Jersey is also trying to pass it statewide. So that's cool. I didn't know about New Jersey trying to pass statewide. I do think that we should have everything that we can to say that these companies need to be more beholden to their workers and keep them whole, because they like to act like the employers are the ones taking all the risk in using and spending money and giving startup capital, that they're the risk takers. But the real risk takers are the workers that show up every single day to work, not knowing, risking whether or not they're going to leave that day with a job. Like, that's a massive risk you take, especially when you consider the fact that 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So that means that your rent, your food, it all depends on that next paycheck coming in. And so you take a risk every day that we show up to work, and not knowing whether you're going to leave that day with that job. And I've been separated from my job on multiple occasions, and it is quite an unpleasant feeling, to say the least. Excuse me. So yeah, no, that is not guaranteed. Sadly, in the United States, we have no real nothing to hold corporations to that, and so there is no mandate that says that you have to provide severance pay. Brian says, sure thing, glad to see another stream. Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. Brian is one of our newest Patreon supporters as well. Shout out to Brian as well, and the rest of the Patreon community for supporting. If you don't already, please do it right now. I see you all watching. Please do us a favor and support the show. We need your support. We're not corporate media. We cannot continue to sustain without your support. We need you, okay? You, we need you to support if you can. If you can afford it, seriously, no pressure if you can't afford it. But if you can afford it, I need you to head over to patreon.com/radical democracy. There's link in the description box below. So please, patreon.com/radical democracy. You can become a Patreon member for as low as $1 a month. If you give us $5 or more a month, you get access to our Discord server and some other goodies that we'll have coming. And so please, if you would like to support the show and support democracy in the workplace, head over there right now and become a member for as low as $1 a month, whatever you can afford. We need your support, just to again, we can all do this a little bit at a time. $12 a year, $1 a month. It's less than a cup of coffee a month, honestly. I mean, please support the show, support independent media. We do not have all the backing of massive advertisers, the pharmaceutical industry and the fossil fuel industry backing us here. So we rely on your support to continue. So please do us that solid. We really appreciate it, deeply appreciate it. And and if you would like to drop us a one-time tip, we don't have super chat enabled right now. So instead of super chat, what we have is coffee. So if you'd like to leave us a super chat, instead, you can just drop us a tip on coffee. No account is required. Just, you can drop us a tip, anything $1 or more. And if you leave a comment with the tip, we will read the comment out on the stream. Tammy always has eyes on that. And so she's constantly checking in. So if we get any new Patreon patrons or any new coffee tips on stream, we will shout you out. We will give you a massive shout out here. Massive thanks. And also read any comment that you have for us. So if you want to leave a comment that you want to make sure it gets read out, please super chat, coffee.com/radical democracy. All right. Any more comments here? We got one from Shin who says, last question. What about the people who say some income inequality is okay because not everybody has equal abilities? Some people are more talented than others. Do you agree? I think that it's arbitrary valuation of human beings that I don't think that it works out well ever. I don't personally believe in that. I would love to see. I believe that the way we get to a free society is by trying to equalize, trying to literally make every job cost the same so that people have, the incentive that you get is the prestige of the job. And that should be enough. As long as every job has a dignified living wage. Now I could see some stuff for like specialization and skills, like, okay, we can have some little amount of wealth inequality, I suppose. But honestly, I just want to see us get to a place where it's like, listen, if everybody's taken care of, and why do we need what if you become a doctor, you will be revered as a doctor. You become a teacher, you will be revered as a teacher. But make sure everyone has, whatever the job is, you have it's a dignified living wage, and then you wouldn't have to work. You also have, I think that's like libertarians. I think that's they should agree with that. That should be a libertarian sort of viewpoint, because then you have the liberty to move around between jobs. Like right now, I can't move freely between any job I want to do. And oftentimes we're limited we don't get to choose the jobs we want to do, because the jobs we want to do simply don't pay enough often. Right. And so a lot of us, we go into jobs that we don't want to do because the money's there. I got into certain software engineering gigs and such, and it's not necessarily what I want to do so much as that's where the money is. And so that's what you have to do. And I think that I would like to get to a point where people had the real freedom, more freedom. And if you really believe in freedom, it's like, I want people to have the freedom to move around and switch jobs. And I think that the only way that that's doable is if jobs stay around a similar range. I could see some, and trust me, in worker cooperatives, like my idea, don't get scared away from worker cooperatives. My idea is considered more radical. There are plenty of worker cooperatives that have a differential between pay. Most worker cooperatives have differentials in pay. And in Mondragon's company in Spain, fourth largest company in Spain, over 100,000 employees in a cooperative of worker cooperatives, a network of worker cooperatives, they have differentials. Nobody makes greater than 8 times what the lowest paid worker makes at any one organization. And so, but each organization chooses their own number, how much of a differential they want. Some are 1-to-1, some are 2-to-1. Somebody can make, the highest paid person gets to make up to 2 times as much as the lowest paid person. Like once we get out beyond like 2 to 5 times as much as another person, I start to be like, I'm like, I don't think so. I don't like that. I don't like the sound of that. I don't think one person is 5 times more valuable than another human being. And I think that that's a hard argument for me to make. I think that, that's just a tough argument to make. So I certainly do think that there's room for some people to decide democratically at each organization what they want to do. That's what I believe in, is workers get together and democratically vote on those sorts of things, so that you just feel that it's fair, at least because you decided. So What Up America says, I wish more than anything I could take music production full time. 2 recessions kind of stymied those plans. Listen, I've heard some of What Up America, like What Up America is working on an intro song for the show, and he's already sent me like a preview clip of it, and it was fucking dope. It was dope. I loved it. Tammy will tell you how excited I was when I was listening to it. It's awesome. And I'm like, why would we, in an efficient economy, we would match people up? Everyone would be matched to the job that they wanted to do the most, because that's the job that you're going to put the most effort into. I want to do this job here. Like, I want to do what I'm doing right here in front of you. This is what I want to do. I don't know that this is what I'm going to get to do for a living, because it's literally entirely reliant on us being able to earn enough through community contribution. So that's what will decide whether I get to do this for a living. There is some chance that this simply will not make enough money. Then I got to go back to doing the stuff I don't want to do. And that's tough. And the more I say this on camera, the less employable I become, by the way. So I don't want to go back to that sort of stuff. This is what I want to do. But it's only because of unemployment right now that I'm able to do this and able to do this work, is because I'm collecting unemployment right now. So if I didn't have that safety net, I would have to be doing work elsewhere. And this is what I want to do. It's a service. It's media, which is a crucial institution in this country. We need more independent media, certainly, but it's a really tough industry to be in, because there's, being a left independent media journalist, like, that's not where all the big bucks are. Let's be real. It's a lot of when you're talking and speaking to the left tends to be, not the most financially vibrant community. We're struggling on the left. And so it's hard to raise money here on the left, and it's hard to keep these sorts of things going. And so it's a unique thing that we do here. And yeah, and people like, why would we would in an efficient society, we would match every person up with the job they do best. There's this like video of like, I hate videos that they try to like make cops look good and stuff, but there's some video of a cop like walking through like a New York subway, and he comes across this lady, and he like gives her some change or something, and she starts singing, and she sings like she is in an opera, and it is like, it literally brings, I think, the cop to tears. Oh, great, cops have feelings, sure. Let's not humanize these bastards here. All cops are bastards. Yeah, I think, but why the hell is that woman sitting there homeless in a New York subway, homeless, begging for money, when she has this beautiful gift that she could share with the world? She literally brought people to tears with her voice. And instead of her being on Broadway somewhere, she is, wasting away in a New York subway, like, homeless and suffering and struggling. That's not an efficient society. So and it's not an efficient economy. So I would love to see us an economy and a society where we have our basic social safety net in place. A universal basic income or something like that could be done in the world we live in today, and let folks like What Up America, try to be the best version of themselves and pursue their, just whatever happened. Noam Chomsky talks about it a lot. Like, we've lost this idea of self-development and growth and development of ourselves and search for meaning and purpose. And so we do these jobs that nobody, most people don't like the job most people don't like the job they have. And so that's not an efficient economy as far as I'm concerned. And I would much rather see something where people have more choice in that. And I think that in order to do that, we just need to, me, what I'm gonna say, build democratic workplaces, of course, and support democratic workplaces, and then and hopefully build power through electoral politics in order to develop a social safety net as well, so that we can have just people's basic needs met, so that they can then not be destitute and not be worried about, am I going to be able to eat or house myself or clothe myself if I don't work for somebody else, and just allow people to be the best version of themselves and to explore whatever that means and find meaning and purpose through that. And I think that would be the most dignified, free way that we could live. So that's what I'd like to see brought about. So thank you so much for the comment there, What Up America, and shout out to What Up America, another one of our great Patreon patrons, support of the show. Really appreciate you. Shin says you should look into the idea of libertarian socialism. It's not an oxymoron. It's just another term for anarchism. I don't think it's necessarily another term for anarchism necessarily. Some people would call me, I call myself libertarian left. You can say libertarian socialist. This is that's assuming libertarian is on the opposite pole of authoritarian. I consider myself to be libertarian in that sense, not a libertarian. Let me be very clear in that, but libertarian in that sense of the libertarian left, as they say. But I don't care what you call it. Honestly, you can call it Teddy Pendergrass, as Adolf Reed says. Clearly old fella there. But you can call it whatever you want to call it. I just care about what is it actually, what's happening, what does it represent? And if it's not democracy in the workplace, then I don't care. I don't care what you call it. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm referring to. Democracy and democratizing our economy. That's what I'm referring to. So What Up America says, then young people on the left get slammed for getting an art history degree and being in student debt. Exactly. And which is just garbage. Like, get the art history degree. I had a friend who was he's an amazing artist, and he had to go into like industrial design, and it became this thing where, he had to do like digital media. He really liked doing physical media and illustration, things like that. But just the money's not there. And so you end up having to go where the money is and doing work that is, it sucks the soul out of you. I had a friend who was we used to like geek out over math, and like, it was just, we were in the same calculus study group. Shout out to my buddy Yvonne. Shout out to Yvonne and Steph. Hope y'all are doing well. And we used to, he's doing work, right now that he doesn't find the sense of purpose that we thought we were going to have in pursuing these careers. Once we got out of school, once we got out of college, it was like, oh, you know, we just loved math, and for me, math and computer science, and just wanted to sort of be able to explore that universe. But it's more like you're just like forced into the grind, and it's all about just like, how do I grind this out? And you're stuck in some, like, you know, terrible working conditions, and you're working 10 or 12-hour days plus travel time, and you're overworked and still somehow underpaid with poor benefits and no retirement and no savings, always scraping by. Everyone just, no matter what you're making, it feels like you can make 6 figures and still be living paycheck to paycheck in this country. And trust me, I've done it. So yeah, it sucks that people get put in that position, because you should be able to pursue whatever kind of degree you want to pursue, or no degree at all, and still be able to survive and not be, you know, destitute. So Tammy says liberal arts and social/service studies are undervalued because it doesn't contribute to the military industrial complex like most STEM jobs do. Exactly. This is the key thing that happens. How we value jobs is just completely based off of the ability for those jobs to make profits while exploiting labor. And we've undervalued things in certain service work and social or liberal arts, because those were essentially labeled as women's jobs, and so they then undervalued them. They purposely set the pay low for those jobs. Teachers, a lot of teaching jobs, and nursing, and these sorts of things. Nurses have gotten a lot of gains through the labor movement, luckily. But there is this constant situation where those jobs are undervalued, significantly undervalued. So yeah, I totally agree. All right, I'm gonna start getting ready for our next story here. Let's keep it moving along. I just need to check on. We're trying to have a guest come on. Kwame from Raise Fist Media might join us tonight, but I'm not so sure. We'll look out for that. He might join us for 1 or 2 stories here, but he's got a busy day today, so might not be able to make it. All right, so let me see what I have up next. Okay, let's do. Next up, this is a quick one. Just quickly wanted to chat about some news about the Edward Snowden, a recent revelation in the Edward Snowden case, that I just wanted to make sure that I'm covering this stuff. I just feel like it would be an injustice, and I would be doing a disservice if I did not cover these sorts of stories. And so I want to make sure that I'm not hyper focused on the electoral politics always, and that I'm still maintaining a focus on things like, you know, stories like this, and the stories that get less attention in mainstream media that deserve to have attention. So definitely want to draw attention to this Edward Snowden story and these recent revelations. So let's do that. Okay. So this is from a BBC News article from September 3rd. And it's titled NSA Surveillance Exposed by Snowden Ruled Unlawful. So the NSA surveillance exposed by Edward Snowden ruled unlawful. And you can see a picture of Edward Snowden here for those who don't remember him. And I'll just read a bit from this article. A national security agency surveillance program has been ruled unlawful 7 years after it was exposed by whistleblower Edward Snowden. The surveillance of millions of Americans' telephone records first came to light in 2013. Now, the U.S. Court of Appeals has ruled intelligence leaders who publicly defended the program lied. And Mr. Snowden has said he feels vindicated by the ruling. He currently lives in exile in Moscow, but last year expressed his wish to return to the U.S., where he faces espionage charges over his decision to go public. Quote, I never imagined that I would live to see our courts condemn the NSA's activities as unlawful and in the same ruling credit me for exposing them, Mr. Snowden said. And yet that day has arrived, he added. Top U.S. intelligence officials had publicly insisted the NSA had never knowingly collected data from private phone records until Mr. Snowden exposed evidence to the contrary in 2013. Following the revelation, officials said the NSA surveillance program had played a crucial role in fighting domestic terrorism, including the convictions of, and they go on to name some convictions here. So that was their response. Okay. So I thought that this was just a story worth highlighting. I just want to put my view on this on record and let it be known that I support Edward Snowden. I support everything that he did. I believe that he is an American hero and he deserves to be treated and viewed as such. And he absolutely should be, now that this ruling has come to light, there is no reason why he shouldn't be allowed to return to this country and to live his life out where and how he intended it. He has already suffered enough to have to be exiled away and have to worry about extradition. We see what's happening with Julian Assange right now. That's another case that I really want to get into, but I just need to, I need to get everything straight. But I can just tell you outright, as far as Julian Assange is concerned as well, that I support Julian Assange. I believe that what he did with WikiLeaks was totally justified and should be protected by the First Amendment. I don't care that it harmed Democrats. That doesn't matter. What he did was expose factual information. And that is literally the job of a journalist. So I believe that before I got into journalism. I certainly believe that, only more so now that I am a part of this weird world. But I just want to make sure that I come out there and voice my support for both of them and saying that what is being done to them is an injustice, both to Julian Assange and to Edward Snowden. So, the extradition by the U.S. And the sad thing about the Julian Assange situation is that because he transgressed against Democrats are sitting around, and the Democratic Party and the Democrats are sitting around cheering this stuff on because, it all to protect the power and protect institutional power of the DNC and the Democratic Party. And meanwhile, turning away from their constituency, who the base does not believe in this. The base does not support NSA surveillance of U.S. civilians. They were surveilling phone records and lying about it. And they were, spying on U.S. civilians. They were spying on you and I, spying on you everyday people. And trust me, it can happen to any of us. If you speak out against the established ways, then you are at risk. And I think a lot of folks that watch this will be within that group. So we have to watch out and make sure that we pay attention to these sorts of stories, because if they can do it to someone, a journalist like that, with all of their, credibility and backing, then they can definitely do it to the smaller folks. If they can do what they did to Tulsi Gabbard, in smearing her as like this Assad apologist and this sort of, even though she's a sitting like U.S. veteran and a sitting member of the U.S. National Guard, they still smeared her as anti-American. So there's no amount of service or loyalty you can offer to this country that if you ever step outside of the accepted bounds, then you will be casted out from, accepted society as well. And if it can happen to folks like that, if it can happen to a sitting congresswoman who's also a member of the U.S. National Guard or the Hawaiian National Guard, then it can happen to any of us. And if it can happen to Edward Snowden and Julian Assange, it could happen to myself or anyone watching this as well. So we have to stand up. And even if it's not, even in the case like, it was against Democrats, it made Democrats like, I guess, me, obviously, I had the same critique even when I was rocking with the Democratic Party. I had the same critique and still believed that, Julian Assange was done dirty. But certainly, there's, me now, folks might just say, oh, well, you don't like either party. And sure, I don't. They both suck. Both parties suck. As Tim Black says, both parties suck, Johnson. So yeah, that's we should be critical regardless of who the information may disparage. If it's factual and a journalist is just doing their job, then that's a violation of the First Amendment. If we are trampling on that, then all of our free speech can be trampled on. So we got to look out for this. If you believe in free speech, you should be supporting Edward Snowden and supporting Julian Assange, whatever party you identify with, or whatever your ideology, you should certainly have that consistency if you do believe in free speech and the First Amendment. So the freedom of press. So they should Edward Snowden, he revealed important factual information that the US government was spying on its citizens, and he should have been praised and treated like a hero, and instead he was exiled. So I hope that this is a vindication. Right now it's only on paper, but hopefully it's followed up with real action where he's allowed to resume his old life essentially, and hopefully have some sort of return to normalcy, whatever that means in 2020 pandemic COVID era. Like who's returning to normalcy anyways? But all right, so that's that. I just wanted to make sure that I shouted that out, and called it out, called some attention to it, and stated my position on that, because it is an important case. So let's keep trucking along. Do we have any comments that we want to get to, Tammy, before we charge ahead?
Just one. There's an add-on from before.
Oh, what's up, Grayson? All right. We got a comment from Grayson Horner. Shout out to Grayson. I gotta tell folks a funny story about what happened with Grayson the other day too. Grayson Horner says it isn't just that. It is that capitalism as well doesn't value some fields that are super important for bettering yourself and your understanding of the world. Exactly. Like it does this because those fields don't pull in profits for a capitalist. So if that happens and those fields don't align with that, then they just leave you shit out of luck, and then all of a sudden those fields end up devalued, and those are valuable fields that we need to advance human society and our understanding of the world and our ability to live in this world. And we need these folks. We need folks to be able to reach their maximum potential, reach their full potential, and we don't do that. Every time somebody dies young without health insurance, or a kid goes hungry so they can't focus at school, and we have to do better. So yes, it's absolutely true that capitalism devalues and undervalues some fields that are vital to advancing the human project. And that's what capitalism has been doing now for decades and centuries. And so we gotta do something differently. We can't keep on keeping on with the same old with capitalism. And if you understand capitalism, how it's truly defined as a system, represented, defined by the employer-employee relationship, that is capitalism. That's what we're talking about when we say capitalism. That's what needs to be changed. This system where we have a handful of people in charge of the masses of us, and just can't. That's not sustainable. So. Yeah, shout out to Grayson Horner. Grayson, that video that you commented on with Tim Black, it was just I uploaded this video with Tim Black the other, I covered Tim Black's speech at the People's Convention back on August 30th. They held the People's Convention. They had a lot of speakers on there. I covered a bunch of folks that spoke, some of my favorites, highlighted them, and Tim Black was one of the folks that I covered. And I did this video on Tim Black, and I was editing it, and I'm editing a ton of videos and, trying to record and prep shows for the next show, and then also do the video editing and doing all that. And I edit this video up and launch it, publish it. I'm starting to, just reviewing the video, and realize that I edited it. I messed up in the editing, and I overwrote some of Tim Black's speech. So I took that video down, unpublished it, published up, whipped up a new version of the video really quickly and published it, and didn't realize that I had selected only a portion of the video and not the entire video. So I ended up uploading only my intro comments and then Tim Black's speech, and I forgot to upload the rest of my commentary, which was a ton more commentary. And of course, because it's 2020 and my luck is just what my luck is, Tim Black ends up watching that video and commenting on it and saying how he liked the video and said he's keeping an eye out on us. And I love that, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much to Tim Black for that. Really, I mean, that means so much. That's inspirational. He's literally like the biggest independent Black media figure out there, period, is Tim Black. So to have someone like that say, you know, to me that he's keeping an eye out and watching out for us, that is, I mean, it feels almost surreal. But it was just like, just my luck. Of course, the one video that this happens on that I screw up is the video that, you know, Tim Black ends up actually watching, and he just missed the whole end of my commentary. So I ended up, once he commented, I realized the mistake in watching the video while I was responding to his comment. I'm listening to the video and realized the video cut short, and I'm like, what the hell? Why did it cut short? And realized only then that I had uploaded only a partial version of the video. And so just terrible luck. So and I was laughing with Grayson Horner because Grayson came in the comments on the first video and was like, oh yeah, the production quality on this is great. And of course it's the video that I ended up screwing up on, but I don't just screw up on it once, I screwed up on it twice. So that video that Grayson ended up commenting on is still, I left it up, but I had to upload a new version with the full commentary. I hope Tim Black sees it, but I don't know if Tim Black will ever see the full version with my full commentary. And I think that I really wish he had saw the full commentary, because the beginning was just tame Kamali, and I didn't get to go off and be the whole version of me, but I went off on the second part and, you know, gave him some more props. And so, yeah, it just was like, damn it. Of course, like the one video that somebody in that stratosphere ends up watching, and it's a screwed up video that I did. Of course, because that's 2020 for everyone. That's how this year is going to be. All right. So, any more comments we want to get to before we push along? Nope. All right. We will keep on trucking. All right. Let's see what's next up. All right. Let's do this story next. Okay. Give me one sec while I cue this up. This is sort of this was some breaking news earlier today, and had to get in some reaction to this because this is just absurd here. So let's check this out. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So J.K. Rowling has found her way into the news again because she just can't quit. So she recently launched a new book, and boy, oh boy, let's check out this story on this. Check out the story about it, and then I have plenty of thoughts on this. So let's take a look, and then we'll come back and we will chat. All right, and this is a story from Pink News, but I originally just saw this come across. RIP J.K. Rowling was trending on Twitter this morning. And so here we have it. A new book penned by J.K. Rowling finds her private detective protagonist, Cormoran Strike, investigating a cis male serial killer who dresses as a woman to kill his cis female victims, according to an early write-up. The first review for Troubled Blood describes it as a book whose moral seems to be never trust a man in a dress. According to the Telegraph, the meat of the 900-page novel is an investigation into a cold case, the disappearance of a woman in 1974, believed to be a victim of a cis male serial killer whose modus operandi, MO, is dressing as a woman. One wonders what critics of Rowling's stance on trans issues will make of the book, writes reviewer Jake Carriage. And quickly, Troubled Blood was criticized on social media. We can see somebody responding and saying, right or wrong, says it's impressive how fixed an idea transvestite serial killer is as a trope, given how it's never happened, like to the point where Russian police famously failed to catch a female serial killer because they convinced themselves they were looking for a transvestite. So yeah, I mean, J.K. Rowling, like, listen, I love Harry Potter as much as the next person. I literally, Tammy and I were on like the Wizarding World website last night before this news broke. You know, we were out there, you know, doing these, you know, finding out doing the sorting hat and getting sorted and, you know, getting our Patronus and our wand. And I'm Gryffindor with a Hazelwood wand with a Phoenix core, you know, Phoenix feather core, and a Robin for a Patronus, if you don't believe me, damn it. And so I love Harry Potter. I really do. I love those books. I grew up, you know, reading those books and waiting and anticipating for the next one to come out. But boy, oh boy, you cannot separate her from her work. And she is just J.K. Rowling, for those who don't know, I mean, she's a what they refer to as a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist. So these are women who consider, or people that consider themselves feminists, who exclude trans people from, you know, trans women from that, from their feminism and from their struggle for liberation. So these are folks that simply do not recognize the humanity in some of our fellow human beings. And I just don't got a lot of space and capacity for these kinds of people. So J.K. Rowling, this is trash. This is just her trash opinion. And she's now out here doing transphobic propaganda. Like, what the hell is this? Like, this book about, you know, they said the whole book is about some detective who is, and this isn't the first transphobic book this isn't the first transphobic book that she done. She had another book in the series called Silkworm. She did this before. Actually, I think that they go on to talk about that. I'll pull up from this article. Let me just show you one more clip from this article here. Troubled Blood is the fifth entry in Rowling's Cormoran Strikes series, penned under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith. The second in the series, The Silkworm, has previously been criticized over its depiction of a trans character described as, quote, unstable and aggressive, end quote. In the book, the woman, Pippa, stalks Strike before attempting to stab him. After the attack, the titular detective manages to trap Pippa in his office, where her trans identity and dead name are revealed. At this point, J.K. Rowling describes the character's Adam's apple and hands, with the Strike character warning her that prison won't be fun for you, not pre-op. Trans journalist Caitlin Burns reviewed the passage for Them in 2018, writing, "It's an entirely common, though insulting trope about trans women, that they are aggressive and unable to overcome their masculine nature, not to mention villainous, that has become all too common from cisgender authors with only a passing knowledge of trans people." So, I mean, this isn't the first time that J.K. Rowling did this trash, and she believes this stuff to her core, and now she's out here trying to write propaganda in favor of it to try to convince people otherwise. And she's out here using her wealth and she's out here using her wealth and her platform for the worst causes, and just like, this is destructive shit. This is really destructive. And I mean, it's J.K. Rowling. So she's technically, like, we talk about cancel culture, what I believe cancel culture to be, which is the idea of getting a person fired from their job. I think that that's cancellation. And you can't cancel J.K. Rowling. There's no canceling J.K. Rowling. You can be critical of her. We can boycott her, which we should. This book should get zero support from anybody with a conscience. Like, you shouldn't be supporting this work right here. This is propaganda. It's transphobic propaganda. Call it what it is. It's nothing more, nothing less. And she's out here using her platform for this. So do not support this kind of gross work. I try not to support her in any way and try to give her any kind of, give her too much, let her occupy too much space or take up too much of the oxygen from the conversation. And so, but I do admittedly have a weak spot for Harry Potter. I love those books, even though some people will say they're very pedestrian and just like derivative. And I accept, you know, and I'm sure there's lots of better work out there. And if you have some people that you would like, some, you know, books you would recommend, I am always looking. I need a new piece of fiction to read. If you have any books by any, you know, Black authors or trans authors, that would be great as well. And I would love to read those about like witchcraft and that sort of stuff. But I'm more into the like fiction sort of stuff, to be real. And, you know, like fantasy, high fantasy sort of stuff too. And yeah, so I think it brings up this question that sort of brings up the question, can you separate an artist from their art and from their work, and sort of, can you separate the artist and their personality and behavior from their art? And I think by and large the answer is no to me. I don't think you can. I don't think we can separate these people from their work. I think that it's, you know, not just in the sense of like when their work directly speaks to their terrible ideas like this, but even in a broader sense of, you know, do you get to separate, you know, Harry Potter from the transphobia of the author who wrote it? And I don't think you can, really, honestly. Sadly, it sucks, it taints it, and it surely does. And we have to be critical of these things and be critical of these people and realize, like, it's not canceling J.K. Rowling to call her out and to be like, do not support J.K. Rowling. She does not deserve any support. This book should be boycotted. Don't put money into these terrible, you know, into terrible shit like this. It's disgusting. It also, like that Silkworm quote about the like, oh, you know, what do they say? It said the strike character warning her that prison won't be fun for you, not pre-op. Like that, like also simultaneous, like transphobia layered on with the glorification of prison rape culture as sort of this idea that like you're going to be punished by rape in prison, and glorifying that. Also just disgusting and horrendous that we're still, doing these disgusting, just terrible tropes that we should know better than to be doing by now. But, you know, somebody like J.K. Rowling, she doesn't know better. She's a terrible person. I'm sorry. Like, that's just what it is. She's not a good person. She's not a good person. And I know that that's like a broad statement and blah. And sometimes I'll say, like, you can't just like, there's what's a good person versus she sucks and she's trash and she's awful. And that's what J.K. Rowling is. And that's how I feel about J.K. Rowling. You suck, J.K. Rowling. You really suck. And you suck for making me not be able to enjoy my goddamn Harry Potter as well. You suck. But you suck a whole lot worse for making a whole bunch of trans people not be able to enjoy their goddamn lives. Because you sit there and you create and perpetuate these awful, just old, terrible, destructive stereotypes that you're still keeping up in propagating. And just she doesn't listen to basic reason. She can't read basic science, and just what the hell is wrong with you to not recognize the fluidity of gender? Like, it's just so damn gross, just gross. She's fucking gross. I can't stand her. And just like it reminds me of like the fear mongering of like the whole trans people in the bathrooms and like that whole bullshit thing that went on around that. And it's the same sort of vibe here going on of like, we're gonna fear monger, be like, oh, like the person said in that tweet, like, there are literally no cases of this ever happening. Like a serial killer dressing up as a woman, to kill a cis serial killer dressing up as a woman to kill cis women. Like, I'm sorry, but that just literally is not happening. And you know what is happening is all across this country right now, but all around the world, is trans people, particularly trans women of color, Black trans women, being murdered at a disproportionate rate, being violently assaulted, abused at a disproportionate rate, them being killed at a disproportionate rate. So to just have this, like, she's living in this, I mean, to call it a fantasy world doesn't do it justice, because like Harry Potter is a fantasy world. What she's living in is some dark, sick reality that just literally ignores the humanity of a certain set of people, our, fellow citizens of ours, fellow, human beings of ours, who we are saying that they are not a full human being somehow. She feels like she can determine that, and she gets to be the gatekeeper and the decider of that. And that it's okay to literally put out this damaging propaganda out there into the world that she knows we know it's going to get picked up The right wing will love this kind of garbage. They'll be all, you know, they'll all be J.K. Rowling fans, you know, and that's just it's really gross. So I saw the breaking news this morning and her trending, and I saw R.I.P. J.K. Rowling, and I'm not gonna lie, I got super excited for a second there when I saw that R.I.P. J.K. Rowling. I was like, thank you. I've seen so many good people, you know, go recently. Like it's about time that some of these terrible, fucking awful people retired permanently. And so I was quite upset. I was quite upset to find out that it wasn't what I was, you know, silently wishing it was, which was a true end to her bullshit. And that was unfortunate. So I wish that the hashtag RIP JK Rowling had meant something else. I don't think that this will be the death of her career. I don't think this will be the death of anything for her. She will still be literally like the richest woman in all of the UK. I believe she is. She's, I think, like the only second to the Queen, I believe. Richer than the Queen? I don't know. Second to the Queen. So she's either second to the Queen or richer than the Queen. I don't know exactly which one, but she's got buku bucks, and she will not. There's nothing we can do to take her ass down a notch at this point. We gotta ignore her in the sense of like not supporting her work in any way, shape, or form, and to end that shit and just dead that shit. So yeah, fuck J.K. Rowling, fuck her transphobic bullshit, and I don't expect this to be the last time we have to talk about her turfy ass. So I will try to do my best, and I can't do it enough justice, and we will try to have some guests on the show who are trans rights activists, and have them speak on issues like this, not wasting their time with garbage like this, hopefully, but on these sorts of issues and why they can be so damaging in to the trans community. So but we will definitely looking to make that happen. So we will do everything, make every effort to make that happen. And yeah, just I got nothing but love and solidarity with trans, gay, queer community. And I come from a very homophobic, transphobic society, family upbringing. I spent high school in Jamaica. It is violently homophobic, transphobic there. Literally, like, it is very violently so. Family members killing family members that they find out are gay or trans. So people are, these are ongoing issues that I literally, like, I can't, my family, if my dad sees this, like we won't speak anymore. I don't speak to my dad right now. He lives in another country, but like this is how my family fails. Like they literally wouldn't speak to me. If we ever have these conversations out, like they will disown me for literally just being on the same side as in supporting and being in solidarity with gay and trans people. They are that homophobic and transphobic, and still in Jamaica. It's in the music, it's in the culture, and it's even worse than here in the US. And so I've seen it both here and abroad, and it's really dangerous stuff. And so I want to do anything I can to stop the injustice that is going on. And this shit right here from J.K. Rowling, it makes things so much worse. And it didn't need to happen. And it's just garbage ass transphobic propaganda that she did, and it's really gross. So do we have any comments that we want to take? Any thoughts on that? Or all right, love to hear from the community on that, because yeah, that one, I saw it come across the feed this morning, and it was just like, well, I almost went to do a breaking story on it just because it was just so like, what the hell is wrong with this lady? What Up America says, as a trans person, it's so scary to hear words like this between her and Deborah. So I feel like this promotes murder of trans, even if they don't say it outright. Like, really, like, seriously, you're talking about, like, you're demonizing them as some like villains and making them out to be like some sort of, dangerous, like, murderous, villainous, caricature, and it's all just a bullshit trope that just does not square with reality. That's not the reality. The people that are the victims of the violent crime are trans people in these societies and in modern day. Like, that's what's going on. It's been throughout history. Like, so it's completely detached from reality to be putting out BS propaganda like this. It's disgusting, and it's so awful that somebody with so much power can do this stuff. And so, yeah, it's scary to hear this stuff. And I always try, like, it's so hard to, like, what do you do about it? What do you do about it when somebody like J.K. Rowling, what are our outlets to stop her? And boycott is definitely one of them. Do not support her work. And calling out her bullshit as much as we can, and trying to stand in solidarity with our trans comrades and trans people, wherever that might be. We need to form solidarity and build solidarity, intersectional solidarity, so that we can have strength in our numbers, and knowing that, listen, they would like us to all be divided up and fight one another, but if we build a united left, we can win on these fronts, and at least build a society where these people can't do damage to people, because people are properly taken care of, protected in our society. And we know that we're not there yet. We're so far from that right now. For Black people, for trans people, for Indigenous people, for immigrant, foreign-born people, particularly from Latin America. We see what's happening on our southern border. So there are so many peoples who this society is failing right now, and we talk about, like, national security and all those sorts of things, and people do not feel safe and do not feel secure right now. And we need to do better, and it's absolutely a failure of society when we don't. So I am, and hopefully we'll have What Up America on the show. We've been talking about bringing What Up America on the show soon. So look forward to that. And we can, we'll talk, and if you want to talk on any kinds of issues, no pressure. We don't have to talk about this sort of stuff. We could talk about whatever, just left issues, whatever. I don't want to put that pressure on you, for sure. So we will definitely communicate offline, in Discord server and stuff, and we'll chat, and hopefully have What Up America on the show soon. For anyone who didn't see it, we had our first comrade on the show the other day, and that was a really great conversation that we had with Steve Alvarez, one of our Patreon community. So we are looking to bring more in a segment that we're calling Comrade Comments. We are always looking for better names, because we're not the best namers of things. So if you have better names for this stuff, by all means, suggest better names. If you join our Discord server, become a $5 or more Patreon per month. If you subscribe for $5 or more to our Patreon, you will get access to our Discord server, where you can make suggestions like that for the show. So please join patreon.com/radical democracy and support the show that way. And then, so we'll chat in the Discord server, and hopefully we'll have, our goal is to have more of our Patreons on, hear the voice of the community, and help to, if we can help, any shout out some organization you're working for, or a movement, or anything like that, or highlight some of the work that you're doing in your community, or anything like that. That's what we want to do. And that's the goal here. So please support the show, patreon.com/radical democracy. And we are looking forward to having What Up America on the show to talk about all kinds of issues. So, maybe we can talk about some of this stuff. Tammy says, exactly, What Up America. JK is adding/fueling the transphobic tropes portraying trans people, especially trans women, as predators and violent, when it is the complete opposite. Yes. And it just can't go unsaid that it's like, this is completely detached from reality. It's just utterly detached from reality. And so it's especially, like, malicious to me when she does it like that, when she's doing this. It's just, she really has to, it's as fantastical as, Harry Potter and all of that. Like, that's the same. She's living in that. She's trying to create that same fantasy world, because it is totally detached from the reality that we're living with in this country today. And she clearly just doesn't care about the damage she's doing. Grayson Horner says, like, JK obviously knows nothing about trans people. She needs to go back to wands and Harry Potter, right? Like, seriously, like, just stick to that shit and shut the fuck up when it comes to anything else. I don't want to hear her opinion on anything else. I think, who even knows? I don't want to hear her opinion on race, on any social issues. I don't want to hear it. She's lost all credibility in my book. Just stick to Harry Potter and don't go a step further. You don't belong a step further. And it's unfortunate that we even have a system set up that somebody can amass so much wealth, that she can have so much power and so much outsized power, that I don't know how we stop people like that. I don't know how we stop people like that, other than, you know me, I can bring everything back to, building workplace democracy. Not that I think that it will solve all these problems outright. I just think that it will, prevent things like allowing, some people to amass so much wealth and power in our society. We cannot, we can't distribute wealth so unequally in the first place, because trying to do the wealth redistribution, it creates all this tension in our society. And so we got to just distribute the wealth evenly in the first place, so that we don't have these people like a J.K. Rowling getting these outsized power and platform to spread hate, because that's what she's doing at this point. Is just using our platform to spread hate, and it's vile. And I wish there was something more that we could do about it. Any other comments? Sorry. Grayson Horner says she doesn't have to agree with us. She just has to stop pushing hate. It isn't that hard. We're on the same wavelength here. Like, it's not that difficult. Tammy says, sometimes you can separate an artist from their art if it's just them being rude or something. But when it's prejudice / harmful to people, then hell yeah, I can't separate the art from the artist. Yeah, that's my position. Is like, it's impossible to do, and trying to do so is it requires cognitive dissonance that I don't want to participate in. And so I won't. I'm not going to sit around and pretend I can just read Harry Potter and pretend like nothing, nothing's wrong. No. If I read Harry Potter for 5 minutes, I need to spend 10 minutes that day calling out J.K. Rowling and her garbage and her transphobic nonsense, and at least doing my part to push that forward and to stand in solidarity and to try to be on the right side of history on issues like this, because I know for sure what the right side of history is on this issue, and that's recognizing the humanity of every single human being, including and especially our trans comrades out there. So absolutely need to recognize that trans, non-binary, queer folk, they are every bit as human as anyone else, and they deserve to have that humanity recognized and protected. And people like J.K. Rowling are actively harming that. All right. So Shinsung says, what up, America? I have a question. Do you think if a trans person wants to be in a relationship with a heterosexual, they should let them know they are trans? If they don't, it's not consensual. This was actually, so this is something that Tammy and I were recently having this conversation out, actually, and I am of the mindset that certainly, people should be open to one another in a relationship. You have to, you should be forthcoming and so certainly I do believe that is important to be honest, to be transparent as you can be. But we also should recognize that there is an inherent danger just to a trans person disclosing that they are trans. Like, they could be, it doesn't even have to be somebody that they're involved in a relationship with, but you don't know, sadly, because of the society we live in right now, it is dangerous just to reveal that you're trans. Sometimes that is a serious, it can be dangerous. And so I don't think that we can totally put, I don't think that it's fair to put that onus, lay that at the feet of trans people, to say that it is their responsibility to disclose that information. Certainly, you should talk to somebody that you are seeing as a potential partner, and talk about those sorts of things the same way that you would talk to anyone who could have some, medical condition, anything like that, right? you should talk about that, set boundaries, be open, set clear boundaries. But I worry that if we say, like, I don't believe that this thing that's like, if you're what, like, in like, to what, like if you if somebody, kisses another person, they don't disclose that they're trans, like, is that not consensual? No. You're consenting to kissing another person as you see that person to be and as you perceive that person to be. I don't believe that that's a somehow, like, to say that that's not consensual would be essentially saying that the trans person is essentially raping the cis person. And I think you mixed up your terminology there. You said heterosexual. I think you mean cis, or I don't know. It could be heterosexual. It could be a gay trans person. So, that's fine. I just think that I don't think using the language of consent necessarily is the right language. And I'm not an expert on this. This is just my instinct on this. I don't want to endanger, trans people by saying that it's their responsibility to go out there disclosing that sort of information to people, when literally just disclosing the information in and of itself can sometimes get you hurt or killed even. So no, I don't think that can be the expectation, and we can't have that expectation. If somebody feels comfortable talking about it, certainly they should. And should bring that up with their partner before they're intimate. But I don't think that it's totally the responsibility of a trans person to disclose that, unless if they're asked about it directly and they're asked about it, and the person, then I don't know. That's a messy situation, and I honestly don't know. I would love to have somebody with more expertise on this, a trans activist, a trans person, to talk about it themselves and give their position on this, because I would defer to somebody that is actually of this identity to educate me on this, or to at least set the boundaries of this. And I'm certainly not the one that can do that, and I fear that putting the responsibility entirely on the trans person is dangerous to that person. So that's my general thought. I certainly could be moved on this. Okay, so Tammy says the power dynamics are different there, because the cis person has social power over trans people, and unfortunately, violence against trans people is far too common for trans people to disclose that info with no guaranteed safety. Yeah, see, that was like like Tammy and I were talking about this recently, and we share the same take in that that can be a very dangerous situation. What Up America says, I don't really know. I'm not an arbiter on trans issues. Just know that's the way I am. I don't know what laws should be applied exclusively to trans people. Yeah, like same. I feel the same about, like, just because I'm Black doesn't mean like I know every, like, how reparations should work in this country. And like I am no arbiter of of Black issues per se or anything like that. I can speak to my own experience and that sort of thing. And so I would certainly defer to the trans community on this, in what's the correct way to approach these sorts of situations. What's the safe way for everyone involved to approach these sorts of situations? And Shin says, I support the trans community, by the way, as do I, and got nothing but love for, all trans folk out there. And Tammy says, genitalia preference is valid and real, but you don't know for sure what genital someone has just from knowing their gender identity, or even knowing the sex on the birth certificate because of intersex people. Yeah, exactly. So that's just like, there's nothing that says that I have to disclose to you if I had some accident and I literally lost the use of whatever. I don't have to disclose that at the outset. I have the right to my own privacy of health information. That's part of my health information. We have to get used to, I feel like because of the social power in the situation that Tammy was pointing to, I feel like we have to move to a place where the onus is on, any partner going in, that, you accept that, start to have a better one. It's going to require us to have a better understanding of gender and gender identity, and recognizing that, and recognizing things, issues on masculinity versus femininity and what those things mean, and people getting more comfortable with their own sexuality and exploring that, being able to freely explore those things so that they can do so in a safe way. And I think that once we get there, we need to get to a point where the expectation is just that you see people for however your perception of somebody is essentially, and how somebody identifies themselves and how they ask to be perceived is essentially how we have to accept people, initially, and any sort of personal private information like that, and what genitals somebody has, like that's a layer of privacy that can only be revealed in a trusting relationship with a trusting bond there. And I don't think that we can just say across the board, like it's somebody, one person's responsibility, particularly the person with less power in the situation, that the responsibility is on them. Tammy says, also, if you're that concerned about someone's trans/cisness and you won't be violent, then ask your partner if they're trans or cis or what genitals they have. It's safer to cis people to just ask instead. Yeah, that's what I think. And making sure that you are using the right language and respecting people, and taking the time to understand these issues, not putting the responsibility on trans people to educate you on these things, and you taking your own time as a cis person to better understand these issues, because that's what I ask. I ask white people to do that. As a Black person, I'm constantly asking white people to please educate their family, educate themselves, and don't burden, already struggling Black people with that burden. I can't ask that and not do the same for the trans community, and try to become better versed in this, become more knowledgeable, educate myself, so that we use the correct language and we can have these conversations in a safe way that is with people that we trust, and just starting to put the burden on all of us as a society and within our relationships, to say it's part of the process of being in a relationship. Grayson Horner says, the way I see it, learning a partner is trans is just like learning a partner has super small genitalia. Yeah, like it's just like, it's not something that yes, it might change the relationship, but they have no obligation to tell me, and I should still like them regardless. Yeah, same. That's how I feel. I agree. I agree 100%. Grayson Horner says, it is just another unseen physical trait. Exactly. And we got to start to recognize it that way. And like, literally, the responsibility lies with the rest of us, not on the trans community, to get this right in their minds. They have it right in their minds. They've got it right. They're the ones that were ahead of us on these sorts of issues. They've transcended this, and there was literally no pun intended, but I just realized what I said. But yeah, so they're ahead. They have a better understanding of this, and it's up to the rest of us to catch up, the rest of society to catch up with what they already recognize and know. And so I agree. It's like I shouldn't have to. It's just that's a private piece of information that once somebody trusts someone, yeah, sure, they can disclose that, but. There was a recent case, I think, that we discussed. I think I discussed the case, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure we covered that, where there was a soldier who murdered in the Philippines. There was a U.S. Marine who murdered a trans woman in the Philippines, and the courts just let that guy out after 6 years, and Rodrigo Duterte just pardoned him in this like political move. That just like sort of is a gift to U.S. empire, essentially. And they this soldier, this U.S. Marine claims that they, were intimate with a trans person, had oral sex performed on them, and then they found out after that the person was trans, and then they murdered them. And like, no, I'm not, like, this is the thing. It's like that is not, I'm not that, by the language, if we are to accept the language that, Shin, I know that it's not what you were saying your language is for this, but the language that you referred to of like, that being non-consensual and that being on the behalf of the trans person, then that's as if to excuse that behavior and say, no, that person deserves to be hurt, deserves to have violence done against them because they were the one that committed some non-consensual act. And so I don't buy that. And I think that we need to start to get right as a society and get a better understanding of these issues so that our fellow, there are fellow comrades. There are just people out there that are human beings, and they're not getting to live their life as full human beings because we are too ignorant to accept who they are. And so I just don't want to be a part of that. And I want to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And so I know I have a ways to go in learning more and being better about my, the language and everything like that, and connecting more with trans activists and trans, people within the trans community, queer community. And so, I think that I like to see that. And I like to believe that we are evolving on this. And I've had some conversations with friends that really leads me to believe that we are evolving on this issue, and we are so much further along than we were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even. And so I do have hope for this, and hope that we are going to make, that we are making massive inroads in changing the way that people think about these issues, so that, we recognize the shared humanity, of other people and other human beings. Any more comments that we want to get to? Thank you so much for all those comments. Thank you to everyone. This is, I love, it sounds like our community here, has the right ideas of mine, and that's really promising and encouraging. And I really appreciate that. So shout out to the trans community as always, wherever you are. And just know that we are in solidarity with you here. And right. Any more comments that we want to get to here?
Yes.
Okay. Tim's going to pull up What Up America says, I would love to come on. Awesome. We are going to have you on for sure. What up? So I look forward to that. Maybe it doesn't have to be when we debut your song, but we'll definitely have you on when we debut your song for sure. So we'll definitely have you on when we debut your song, but I don't want that to be the only reason we bring you on. It's no pressure of that you don't have to do that. That's totally, that's not an expectation. So we'd love to have you on before then. So we will coordinate in the Discord and try to have, I'd like to have a guest on have a comrade on. For now, I'll start with once every, say 2 weeks or so, or every week or every 2 weeks. And then we can do it more often, whatever whatever works out. So definitely want to have some more of the comrades on, some more of the Patreon community. And we could just kind of do it whenever folks have time. And it doesn't have to be an every week thing or an every other week thing. It can just be whenever folks feel comfortable and are ready for it and are up for it. And we can do maybe we'll do some more, do some larger group discussions, things like that. So would really love to highlight, members of our community and empower folks in the community. So would love to give voice to the community in any way that we can. And so absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, What Up, for all the support and for being willing to join us on here. And so we are definitely going to make that happen. We will have you on for sure. Thank you so much. Bob Mama says, how many homeless does it take to make a billionaire? I know, right? It's so, Grayson Horner says too many. Even one is too many, but that's the truth. That's the damn truth. It's the only way their system works. This disgusting, gross, vile, destructive system of capitalism works, as if some people have to suffer. Some have to be unemployed. Some have to be homeless. Some have to be poor. Some have to be hungry, just for some to have too much, more than they can ever spend in 100 lifetimes. Jeff Bezos has more money than he could spend in 100 lifetimes. And he's still amassing more. And still, his ex-wife is the richest woman in the world now. For what, All right. Shin says, would you ever be in a relationship with a trans person? Yes, I would. Yes, I would. With the trans woman, for sure. Tammy says, yes, we're both open to it. He's straight, I'm bi. Yeah, and I consider myself a straight cis man, but yes, I would. And I think that, these are the things that people have to explore their sexuality and try to, I don't know if I didn't even think through these things, a couple of years back. And it's really just through, speaking with people in different communities and going through my own life traumas that allows me to, take the time to sort of self-reflect on these things. And so, yeah, I think that these are things that, especially in communities that I've been a part of, I'm West Indian, I'm Black, these are not necessarily popular viewpoints or opinions to have. and it's where, you know, but it's what needs to happen, and these conversations need to happen in our communities in order to destigmatize the stuff and help people to recognize, like, listen, you don't need to stigmatize this. You can be a masculine, you know, cis, you know, straight, you know, man, and still, you know, accept that, you know, trans, if you really believe, like we say here on the left, trans women are women, then you know, what does that mean? That means that, yes, as a straight man, you can be attracted to, and people, and then we can get into conversations of gender preference. And those are conversations that we should be having out, and we got to get comfortable having them out, because we don't need to just have them amongst ourselves and our peers, but also we're going to need to have them with the next generation, with our children, so that they understand these things, and that they don't grow up with the same ignorances that we grew up with, that allow these, you know, violent ideologies to continue to sustain and to propagate through our society. So yeah, that's you know, that's how I feel about it. And I believe that through, you know, being open, having these sorts of conversations, we can destigmatize these things and, you know, help folks to recognize, like, you know, some people will be like, oh, you're gay. And it's like, no, you know, this is what, trying to understand masculinity versus, you know, femininity, and what do these concepts mean, and what is gender. There are certain cultures in Africa where gender isn't determined until after like 6 years old or 10 years old. You know, after puberty, they determine gender. So there, you know, if in Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States, he describes the Arawak Nation, the indigenous people that Columbus first arrived here and saw, and the society that he describes are like these people, you know, they lived in like these massive communal homes that had like 200 people in them, and they would you know, the way that they had their relationships, that people, there wasn't this idea of like marriage per se. People, you know, women could just get, you know, if they got fed up with their partner, they would just put their stuff outside of their like hut, you know, whatever it was, teepee, and they would put the hut, you know, the partner stuff outside, and they would come home, they just pick up their things and go. So even the idea of like marriage and those sorts of things, those concepts were different. And also gender, they said that the gender roles were not rigid, in that people, you know, there's always been the concept of two-spirit people that were like trans people, even dating back to, you know, in ancient cultures. So this has existed as long as humanity has existed, but it's our own ignorance that has also existed alongside of it. And a lot of it is just hate filled and hate fueled and based on demagoguery. And oftentimes, let's be real, it's tied to things like Abrahamic religions, the church, you know, organized religion, those sorts of, but primarily Abrahamic religions, though, you know, homophobia, transphobia, these sorts of themes in like the Bible and so this is a story as old as you know, human beings. And I'd like to believe that we are finally getting to a point that we are moving past that stuff, where folks, you know, like me exist, and we are, you know, I consider myself, you know, I'm still learning and identifying, but I consider myself to be queer, and because I'm not what, you know, is typical, you know, sort of sexuality, and these are things that we got to explore. And this is part of, you know, why I want people to be able to be their full selves and explore their full selves without persecution or, you know, having to be in any sort of danger or fear of being able to fully express themselves. And but that's sadly the world that we live in. We still got J.K. Rowling's floating around this world saying stupid shit like she says, and, you know, releasing whole ass books with just straight up, you know, nothing but transphobic tropes. And so it's really unfortunate that that's where we are, and that we have, you know, we're not past that, at least. And sadly, we're not past that. But I do believe that we are sort of reaching critical mass on this issue, and people are waking up to this and realizing what we should have realized a long time ago. And that makes me hopeful. So thank you for the questions, everyone. Thank you for the conversation too. Do we have any other comments we want to get to? Tammy says, I forget the details, but a military cishet man had a trans girlfriend / fiance. And when he was out with his military buddies and they found out his fiance is trans, they beat him to death. Yeah, I've heard that story. That's horrendous. There's also a a video I saw where a guy was getting harassed and he ended up getting killed because he admitted to having a trans girlfriend, and it was a black person, and these were just like, okay, he committed suicide. That's right. He committed suicide because he was getting like harassed and bullied because he admitted that he was dating a trans woman, sorry. And so these sorts of violent acts are still prominent, and they happen disproportionately in the against trans people, and we got to recognize that. And that's the issue that people need to talk about, to be talking about, not about serial killer, transvestite serial killers. Like, that's just it's a layer of fantasy that I just can't even rock with. It's so detached from reality. So Shin says, in my opinion, radical third wave feminists believe that they are bourgeoisie. Yeah, I don't know enough about all the waves of feminism. I only know like first wave feminism because through Harriet Fraud, who is one of the like creators of that, and she it's what's I think it's okay, so Tammy's gonna speak on this issue better than I would. So Tammy says, I think the layman term for that is white feminism, which is feminism that serves and upholds white / Eurocentric ideals. I can't think of a better word. Yeah, so I think that's like, okay, yeah, she says that then she just can't think of a better word than ideals. So that's what the third wave, I guess, feminism is, what's known as white feminism. And I know like first wave feminism was essentially, that was like in what Dr. Harriet Fraud is credited as being a part of one of the founders of the original feminist movement. And she says that they made massive mistakes and miscalculations, and one of the big mistakes that she talks about them making is like labeling women's like work in the home as shit work. They are responsible for that. Gloria Steinem and her work together to like do this stuff and like have that labeled as like shit work, and they were like, women are tired of doing the shit work, and all that ended up doing was devaluing work in the home, right? Like it devalued it ignored that some women wanted the freedom to decide that that's what they wanted to do, and some men and men, but when you devalue that kind of work, it made it so that men didn't want to do the work either, is the other problem that was created from that. And so they coined that all as shit work, and then nobody wanted to be in the home, and that both parents started to work, and you had paid caregivers come in for the elite folks that can afford that sort of thing, and the rest of folks have to just use like daycare services, things like that, at absurd costs. So yeah, I think that Tammy says, well, I support intersectional feminism, which is against the patriarchy, because the patriarchy oppresses all genders, and intersectionality is about looking at class, race, sexuality, ability, citizenship together. Yeah, that's what it has to be. That's the only type of left movement that I think will work, is if it's an intersectional movement that recognizes that we have to build solidarity across all of those facets except for class. That's the one facet we all need to share in common is our class solidarity. We need to be of the same class. Now, of course, I will gladly accept class traitors. You just have to be willing to fight for our class, which is the lower class, essentially. But aside from that, I want all race, gender, sexuality, ability, nationality, ethnicity. We have to have intersectionality across those things. We might get into a discussion on race and ethnicity as our next conversation. And so we will see if we have some time for that. We will get into that soon. Tammy says, first wave feminism was a period of, quote, first wave feminism was a period of feminist activity and thought that occurred during the 19th and early 20th century throughout the Western world. It focused on legal issues, women's suffrage. Okay. All right. So that's what's considered first wave feminism. And, I think that in a lot of these early feminist movements, it was not to the benefit of Black women per se. It was focused around white women, Eurocentric white women, for all these initial waves of feminism, as far as I understand it. Tammy goes on to say, white women excluded women of color, especially Black women, and trans people, of course. Yes, and this is all still trans exclusionary.
Hold on, it's loading.
Okay. Give me one more sec here, and then we'll chat about our next topic too.
Internet is so slow, the comments aren't loading.
Sorry about that. Just having some little trouble with the comments there. No worries. No worries. We can keep on cruising, and we can come back if we need to.
Let's just do this for now while we wait.
Yes. And to everyone that's here, that's been listening, please, if you haven't already, do so immediately. Hit the like button right down below. Hit the like button, subscribe, share this out far and wide, but please subscribe. We actually crossed the 1,100 subscriber mark, so shout out. That is a cause for celebration around here. We crossed 1,100 subscribers on the channel, and we are rapidly growing now. So thank you so much to everyone, all of our early supporters. We really appreciate you, and continue to appreciate all that you do to help us keep going. So thank you so much to everyone. Please like, subscribe, and share. And then if you can afford it, I really need you to do this for me. I really do. Not just for me either. This is for the movement for radical democracy, for democracy in the workplace, to help us hire a producer and to build better content, build more content. In order to do that, we need your support on Patreon, patreon.com/radical democracy. As always, a shout out to our entire Patreon community. We are trying to be more active on our Patreon. We apologize to everyone so far, for not being as active as we would have liked to. Again, these things take a lot of time and they require a lot of labor hours. And so we are doing our honest best, and through supporting the channel, that will allow us to do a whole lot more. So please support us through Patreon, patreon.com/radical democracy, as well as on Coffee at coffee.com/radical democracy. And you can send us one-time tips on Coffee, where that essentially is a stand-in for our super chat feature while we wait for that. So it does look like okay, so we did get a tip on Coffee, and we have a comment here from so shout out to What Up America for the tip on Coffee. Thank you so much. What Up for that. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. I thought it was What Up, but it's not. Okay, What Up? Sorry. Okay, What Up became a subscriber on Coffee. So thank you for that, What Up. So thank you for becoming a subscriber on Coffee. And then somebody named somebody tipped us on Coffee and said, thanks for bringing up trans issues on your show. It means so much. Thank you so much to somebody. That's literally the name that they have there. So shout out to somebody who says, thanks for bringing up trans issues on your show. It means so much. Thank you so much, somebody, for the tip. That means so much to us, and we will do our best to talk about these issues. So $5 tip from somebody, and we really appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. And thank you to What Up America for becoming a subscriber on Coffee. We appreciate that support as well. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone for all of your support. It means the world. I mean, it literally is what is going to allow us to continue to exist and to grow and to draw more attention to all of these issues. Folks can't see, but that's what this sign behind me says too, by the way. Like, that's what this sign is. Black Trans Lives Matter. We always support the causes. We out here. It's a sign that Tammy made when we were out at a protest. We had the Pride March here in Boston got sort of taken over by the Black trans activists, and it became it was converted from a parade into a true march, a protest. It got back sort of to the roots of what Pride was about. Am I right? Is that the yeah, right? Pride began at Stonewall, where that was literally Stonewall was police riots, where the police were trying to get access and bust up and assault these, they were breaking into gay clubs and trans clubs, and they were trying to gain entry into this club, and the trans and gay folks stood up and stood their ground and did not let, they held up inside of this club, and they held back, they fought back cops and held them off. And that was the original, what originally generated there was support. It started to generate support, not a lot back then. And I believe the first Pride event was in Boston in support of the Stonewall riots, which happened in New York. So I could have that wrong. But the geography of that wrong. But I do believe Stonewall was in New York, and then the first Pride event that happened in support of that what happened in Massachusetts, I believe in Boston. So it was kind of getting back to the roots of what those Pride events were, which were anti-police protests. And so that's what it became. Our Pride event for 2020 became a Black Trans Lives Matter march, essentially. And I thought that was really powerful. So shout out to all the activists and the folks that put that together and made that happen. I thought that it was a solid march and protest. So, and we were out there supporting, standing in solidarity as best we could. So Tammy says, I think second wave feminism was focused on abortion rights, which was/is an issue because it wasn't holistic and inclusive of reproductive justice. Yeah. So, okay. Wow. Yeah. So, there were some, mistake made at each level. And then I think, so is it considered fourth wave feminism? Is that no intersectional feminism? No, but okay. Tammy says, I don't know what the distinction of third and fourth wave feminism is. So I will try to, we will have somebody on to talk about this stuff and dig into these issues. And we will try to have a feminist activist on to speak on these things, or somebody, a historian of these things, to speak on these issues so that we can learn ourselves. So Bob Mama says a woman couldn't qualify for a loan without the husband or father's approval. Yeah, like this is, and it's not that far back in history what we're talking about. Like that's the thing. Like people talk about like this stuff as if it's like ancient history, and it's not. This stuff was happening recently, and just decades ago this was happening. And so there's still a lot of institutional damage that's been done against women, against trans people, against Black folks in this country, against indigenous people, and it's not that long ago. Mark McKeever says, paving the road for Tammy's mic. I know. Yeah. Thank you so much. To the tips on coffee are going to go towards a mic for Tammy, who is a great voice on women's issues, on issues, queer and women's issues, and issues of mental health, and all these sorts of things. So shout out to Tammy for all she does, and it will be great to have her voice on the show. So Mark McKeever says, smoking one for you too. I am so jealous right now, Mark. I look forward to sparking something up myself when this stream is over. It gets so hot up in here when we're doing this stream. I gotta work that on that. Tammy says the original Pride was a riot. Yes, exactly. Stonewall was a riot. Never forget. Tammy says, I keep trying to send this message and StreamYard won't show it twice. 3 times. Damn, you see, I'm telling you, they are suppressing us. So yeah, no, Tammy is showing me right now that she has tried to send this thing. Okay, she says Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and other Black/brown queer folks stood up against cops raiding gay bars in Stonewall, New York City. So thank you so much. Tammy has literally tried to send this comment like 3 times, and for some twisted reason, they won't let it show. So I don't know why they're being evil, but Tammy literally just had to get up and show it to me. So hopefully everyone caught that. We can't show that message because StreamYard's being evil to us right now. I apologize. All right. Wow. So thank you so much for all the great comments tonight. We've had some really good discussion here. I have this one other topic that I would like to get to, but we are running a little bit long here. But you know what? Let me see if I can get to this. Okay. All right. Let me do this last story here, and then we can wrap after this. So, all right, let's get to it. Zaid Jelani was on Rising on the Hill with Krystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty this morning to discuss a New York Times piece that was released and was published and it was on the topic of race and power. And I just wanted to talk about why I think that Krystal and Zaid had the wrong take here. And so first and foremost, let me just tell you, I love Krystal Ball. I really enjoyed the show Rising. I think Sagar's, a genuine right winger who's sincere, at least in his, as populist as a right winger could be. And I do appreciate the show, and I really have the utmost respect for Krystal Ball. And so Zaid Jelani, he frustrates me sometimes on certain issues, particularly issues around race. He tends to frustrate me. But I, still consider him a credible journalist and such. And so I do want to address what he says here and sort of address their take on this. But I'm going to play this clip of Zaid Jelani's appearance on Rising this morning, and then we'll talk a little bit about that on the other side. Sorry about that. Here we go.
A review of the most powerful people in America across industries was published by the New York Times. Their findings show that out of the identified 922 of the most powerful people in America, according to them, 180 are Black, Hispanic, Asian, or a person of color, self-identifying.
The review includes an interactive map that highlights people of color in power without including each person's identified race or ethnicity. So in one case, the Times highlights Rashida Tlaib, who is Palestinian, as a person of color, but then excludes Alex Azar, who is Lebanese. So some of these things didn't make a lot of sense. Friend of the show and journalist Zaid Jelani joins us to weigh in on the methodology used by the Times and kind of overall this approach. Zaid, great to see you.
Good to see you, Zaid.
Good to be here.
All right, so what did you make of this approach that they took and some of those discrepancies that you and others pointed out?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because anytime that you are constructing something like this where you're identifying other people rather than having them identify themselves, you're going to get into dicey areas where I think there's areas of disagreement. So for instance, not only was like Alex Azar listed as white when he comes from a Lebanese background, I think Justin Amash may have been listed as white. Chris Sununu, who's Palestinian, I think was listed as white. Whereas other people of Palestinian descent were not listed as white. And it's curious because that's actually like a category that's evolved in the census taking. So Arab Americans often were listed as Caucasian or as white, although many people who are Arab American today are petitioning kind of their own category in the census. So it kind of shows how like creating these categories in and of itself is fairly fraught because they're socially constructed, right? So people change how they identify over time. Society, it's like a negotiation between the people and society. Even Kamala Harris's mother, if you look at Kamala Harris's birth certificate, her mother, who's from India, lists herself as Caucasian, right? Which we'd be like, that's bizarre. Like we don't consider people from the Indian subcontinent to be white. But
right.
In the time that she was born, that was a convention they were using. So it's fraught in and of itself. And it's funny that like they think they can make this delineation in a kind of like static way that people aren't going to contest because race is a very fluid concept. Yeah, so.
And Zaid, look.
Okay. So that was Zaid Jelani on Rising discussing a New York Times article that came out that was published on race and power. And I just wanted to talk about what I think they got wrong in that segment. And again, I feel bad because I know I haven't had a chance to cover a lot of Krystal and these folks, and so it might sound like I am, right out of the gate, like I am against Krystal Ball here, but she is a great leftist who I am really, I find myself quite, oftentimes, very closely aligned with her politically, and so she was also a great friend to Michael Brooks, and oftentimes did work with him that I thought was great work that she was doing there as well. So just got to keep on hammering that point home that, listen, I love Krystal. I think that she's great, but I think that she got it wrong here. And I just want to talk about that. So what I think they got wrong, in order to highlight that, I just got to show off. I got to highlight sort of the key people that they honed in on there. Right. And so let me just sort of, the issue that I think that they got wrong, let me just say in advance, is that I think that they're conflating race and ethnicity / nationality. And I think that it's a mistake that is made whenever those things are conflated. So let me show you who they were referring to, and then let's come back, and then we'll come back, and then I'll give my final take on that. So let me show you the people who they referred to specifically, because they named very specific names when they tried to make their case here. And I can only base my judgment off of what they highlighted as what they took issue with. So they referred to, you know, how can the fact that one Palestinian was referred to as a person of color, but another Palestinian was referred to as being white, or how was a Palestinian, Rashida Tlaib, identified as a person of color, but they said, you know, Alex Azar, who is Lebanese, was identified as being white by the New York Times. And they said, oh, you know, the New York Times clearly has gotten it wrong. Okay, well, you know what? Let's take a look at these people, and then I'm gonna again I'll give my take here. But let me take you through just a few pictures of a few of them here. So let's start with Rashida Tlaib first. And so for anyone that's not familiar with Rashida Tlaib, let's take a look. I'm literally in all of these examples, what I'm going to do is I've Googled their name and done an image search on each of their names. So I'm not trying to be biased in the photos that I selected. This isn't some personally self-selected group of photos. I'm showing you the Google image search results for just their name. So first up is Rashida Tlaib. And this here is the, you know, first picture that you see for Rashida Tlaib is this one here. I'm just going to flip through a bunch and give you a general feel for what Rashida Tlaib looks like. Now, you know, again, I'm just flipping through here. Even when she's in images where she's paler, I'll show you, you know, the images when her skin looks paler. But all right, here we have Rashida Tlaib here. All right, now, and I'll tell you, I look at Rashida Tlaib, and you just sort of, you know, is that a white woman to you, or is that a woman of color? And I think just based on her look, you know, to me, I will say she looks like a woman of color to me. She looks like a person of color. She does not look like what I would say is what I would you know, describe as a white woman. And so she looks to be a person of color to me. And her name is Rashida Tlaib. Also, let me just. All right, so next up, we have, so they said, Rashida Tlaib, how could Rashida Tlaib, a Palestinian woman, be defined as a woman of color, but Alex Azar, who is Lebanese man, be called white by the New York Times? And they took issue with that. That was the only example that Krystal Ball pointed to was Rashida Tlaib versus Alex Azar. So let's take a look at Alex Azar now, and we will compare. So take a look at Alex Azar now. And again, this is just literally a Google search for Alex Azar image search. Here we go. All right. I mean, you tell me, you know, you tell me. These are literally the first images I'm pulling up. I'm just flipping through a bunch of images here so you can see that I'm not like self-selecting here or anything like that. You tell me, what is this person? You know, is this a white guy? When you look at him, when the cops look at this guy, do they see a person of color? Or do they see a white guy here? You know, what do you see? Do you see a person of color here? Do you think that cops are looking at this guy saying, oh, you know, this is clearly an Arabic man here, you know? All right. So this is Alex Azar, who they referred to. They also referred to two other people, at least. So they said Zaid Jelani also referred to Chris Sununu and Justin Amash. So he referred to Justin Amash next. Let's take a look at Justin Amash here. And here we have Justin Amash. This is Justin Amash. All right. You tell me, is this a man of color? You know, is this a brown man? Is this a man of color, or is this a white man? I mean, it's a white ass white man right here. All right, folks. Let me spoiler alert. All right. Spoiler alert. So I'm sorry, but what I mean, seriously, this is who you okay. All right. Next up, they said Krystal Nunu, right? Let's take a look at Krystal Nunu. Here we go. Krystal Nunu. Wow. I mean, man of color here, folks. You tell me, is this a person of color here? Or is this comparable to Rashida Tlaib here? Is this somebody who's lived their life? Krystal Nunu here. Do we think that Krystal Nunu has lived his life as a man of color? Seriously? That's how he's had to navigate the world? That's how he's had to navigate the criminal justice system in the United States, the employment system in the United States? You think he navigates that as a man of color? You tell me. You tell me. All right. So the issue here is that I think that they're conflating nationality and ethnicity with race, and it bothers me as a Black person in America. Yeah, it bothers me because I don't. You can't say the nationality of person. Oh, you know, how can one Palestinian be a person of color and another Palestinian be considered white? That's like asking, how can one Canadian be considered a person of color and another Canadian be considered white? What the hell? How can one American be considered, a person of color and another American be considered white? Your nationality does not determine your race. I'm sorry. There are African people. How can one African person be considered white? South Africans, there are plenty of white South Africans, right? We have a whole issue down there in South Africa because of white South Africans, right? And so we have white Africans. You can just because you're from Africa doesn't mean you're Black, right? That's not what that means. That's not automatic, right? Your nationality, your ethnicity does not determine your race automatically, right? So, in Jamaica, we have white Jamaicans, we have Chinese Jamaicans, we have Indian Jamaicans, and to say you're Jamaican doesn't tell me what your skin color is. It doesn't tell me how you have to navigate, the social construct of race. So, and that's not to say that there aren't certain, to be clear, there are certain facial features that get associated with race as well, right? So we have to be careful with that too. Of course, there are things like having a thinner nose are seen as more Eurocentric, whiter. That's associated, like having a white nose versus like a broader nose would be a Black nose, right? So you can have a thinner nose. Blue eyes are associated with whiteness, right? So if you have blue eyes, it's sort of a Eurocentric white. It's associated with whiteness, which it's valued more in society. It's just considered more beautiful, more the beauty standards are set around those features. Straighter hair, that's considered white, right? That's a feature that's associated with whiteness versus kinky curly hair. So, there are certainly, certain features beyond just skin color that do certainly get associated with race. And we should be clear on that. And that's important to know. But skin color should be the number one factor when we're talking about race. I mean, race is literally the color. That's what the construct is the color of your skin. And I think that they completely missed the point here to say the New York Times was somehow wrong to call Rashida Tlaib a woman of color, but to call Justin Amash and Alex Azar and Krystal Nunu white. Come on, they are white. Who are we kidding? When the cops stop them in the streets, when they drive past the cops aren't looking at them like, oh, that's a brown man, oh, that's a brown, that's a person of color there. That's a Black person. No chance in hell. Rashida Tlaib, you see her, you're like, oh, she ain't white. She ain't white. That's obvious to me, at least. And that's me. And listen, I'm a Black American. I was raised by, my mother is white. My mother's Italian. My father's Jamaican. I've experienced race in America. I've experienced race in Jamaica. And, I understand colorism, colorism exists, where racism doesn't exist. Colorism often exists where lighter skinned people are often given favorable treatment over darker skinned people. They're considered more attractive, lighter skinned people. And they always talk about like mixed people. And I'm, people will call me like biracial. I don't necessarily believe in the concept of like biracial, because I think your race is what skin color you have to move around the world in, and you only get one of those. And when the police stop me, or the taxi driver pulls up, or the banker or the landlord sees me, like, they don't see my white mom, they see my black skin color, and that's how I get treated. That's how I get treated by cops. I get treated as black. I've had to my name is Kamali. My name's Kamali Rose. Like, you see my name on a job application, you're associating it with blackness, Africanness, blackness right out of the gate. Kamali, either African or quote unquote Middle Eastern, name Kamal, or my actual name derives from Africa, from Mozambique, Kamali, wind spirit. And so there's no getting around that. I've had to navigate through this world as a black man in America. I've had to that's how, when everybody sees me, for me, race, it often is, it's how people perceive you in an instant, right? Because that's how race actually it's how it gets executed. It's how it gets observed in society, right? Is in a moment, in a snap decision, what does somebody, what are the assumptions someone makes about you? What are their immediate impression of you? Because that often determines how they're going to respond to you, how they're going to treat you. And so, for me, race can be, it's pretty much as, you look at somebody and you kind of know, right? Now, of course, there are cases around the edge, and there's a blur there. You can talk about folks like Sean King, and there are certainly very light, folks that identify as being black. I mean, we have other issues, going on in the news right now. Jessica Krug, Rachel Dolezal, folks like that have, white women claiming that claiming blackness, and when they haven't had to exist that way, on a day-to-day basis for the majority of their lives, and also caricaturing blackness in the same breath, right? Like, Jessica Krug wasn't just pretending to be black. She was pretending to be this twisted caricature of a black person, like angry and loud. And it's just all these sort of like if you don't check those things off, you're not technically black enough, and so we just got to be really careful about what we talk about when we talk about like blackness. It really is just, what is your skin color? And that's what it's about. Some people will say, I've had a friend who gets called, says he's acting white all the time, and the dude's, you've seen Kwame, or Kwame's on the show sometime, Race Fist Media. You've seen Kwame before. Kwame's a black man, but he gets called white because he's into nerdy stuff, and he talks he doesn't speak AAVE necessarily all the time, but he does. He has a mix of it, but it's just, he's an educated person, and so being too educated isn't black enough to not in black people's mind per se, but like the caricature that a lot of like white people have about black people. And so you sort of have to, if you don't fit that caricature, then you are sort of also seen as like not really black, when the reality is like, no, your blackness is just, how are you, what's that skin color that you have typically, skin color and features, and how do people view you? What is their perception of you? Because if you are white passing, it's not the same. It's just not, you're not going to have the same experience, same lived experience as a dark skinned person who has to travel through this society. And we have to recognize that. And I've not been perfect on this issues of colorism my whole life, and sort of, this idea of like being too favorable about my mixed raceness and the sort of, what's attractive about that. But I do think that Krystal and Zaid Jilani are wrong here, and that what they're doing is conflating race and nationality / ethnicity, and they're wrong on it. And so I do, now mind you, the New York Times, who happens to be right on this, I think that their motive behind this is probably, the neoliberal motive of essentially rainbow capitalism in the idea of like creating a rainbow capitalism, diversifying the police, diversify your oppressors kind of mentality. Like, oh, we just need more wealthy Black people and then everything's fair. You know, as long as we have the, you know, neoliberals essentially want the right mix of wealth and equality. Like they want the right the right like diversal mix of inequality, right? They just want to make sure they're fine with the inequality. They just want to make sure the proportionately that there's enough Black people, that, you know, proportional representation for Black, Indigenous people in the ruling class. That's it. Like that's their whole goal of these in the framing behind these stories. So I'm not out here like championing the New York Times as like some arbiter of Blackness or anything like that. I just think they happen to get it right on this issue, and that they actually were correct in identifying these folks and not leaving it up, you know, too much, leaving it up to self-identification of like, it's like, no, wait, like you can kind of determine someone's race because that's how race is determined in our society. It's not how you identify yourself. You know, it's not what you get to go put out there to the world. It's literally how the world sees you. That's what your race is how the world sees you. And that's unfortunately how races, you know, that's how the construct of race has operated in my life and how I've had to, you know, navigate that. And so, yes, I have a you know, white mother and have the experience of seeing how she is treated and how, you know, how she gets treated differently when, you know, she's around, she has her Black kids, when they realize that it's her children that she's with. And then also just the difference of how she gets treated and all the advantages that she's had in life versus, and, you know, the privilege, that's sort of ancestral privilege that gets passed down, and the advantages of that, and recognizing that when I talk about issues of Blackness and these things, but also recognizing that, yes, like, you know, this is how I travel through the world. Like, you know, those lights are kind of blinging, but you can see, you know, you can see how I travel through this world. And it's not, my mother's whiteness doesn't come into play when the cops see me, or when, you know, when the landlords see me or anything like that, or when the employers see my resume and it's Kamali Rose, and, you know, they got all their assumptions that come into play there. So I just wanted to touch on that and call that out because I watched The Rising regularly, and I saw that segment and was just like, no, that is wrong. They are wrong. Like, what, you just named a bunch. How is Rashida Tlaib a woman of color and these people are white? Well, look at them. What the hell? Like, what do you see? Because I see a whole bunch of white dudes. Everyone they named was a white dude that I saw. They're all white. And I don't care how they identify, because I know how the world identifies them. I know what's gotten them their status in life. And it's being able to use that whiteness to their advantage. And so, you know, the New York Times happened to be right on this issue. So do we have any comments we want to get to before we start to wrap things up? We're at 3 hours now. We just hit the 3 hour mark. I don't want to take us on forever here. I think we can start to wrap things up here. So I'm going to take some comments on, hopefully, if anyone has any thoughts on that story, on issues of race. Don't feel afraid, because if you're not, you know, if you're not a person of color, if you're not a Black person, you're still allowed to speak on these issues, and I want to hear your opinion. So please let me know what you think in the comments. Tammy says some people will straight up claim whiteness, and if they look white / mainly treated as white, then yeah, they're white. Yeah, exactly. Like, if you use whiteness to your advantage and you sort of travel through the world as a white person, and you're not like in Black and brown spaces, you know, and let me be clear, there is like, as far as like Indigenous and Latinx folks goes, like, I'm not an expert on that. And race is different in America than it is in other places necessarily. Like, it's not the same no matter where you go. There are nuances to race in different regions of the world. And so the race that I speak on is the race that I've experienced in life. And that's, you know, US racism essentially. And so that's my limited sort of view of the world. I admit my limitations. And so I just understand my sort of bias in this, of course, and I'm not trying to hide the ball on that, and be hard to hide it anyways. But it's so I just want to say that and point that out, that also when it comes to Indigenous, you know, ethnic and cultural identification, that can be quite different than, you know, sort of how people are, you know, just like how you perceive someone. It's oftentimes sort of how you've lived and what your lived experience is. And if you've lived within like Indian country and you operate within that society, then yes, you are, you know, Indigenous, even if sometimes the world may not see you that way at first sight. So that again ties to ethnicity, culture, ethnicity really. And I think that that's a separate issue and something that still is. And to be clear, like ethnicity and nationality are also facets of oppression. Like those are also other facets of oppression. I'm not downplaying those or saying that those aren't also very massively important. Those are absolutely certainly important, ethnicity and nationality. But I think that it's a mistake to conflate that with race automatically, and to say that all Palestinian people or all Lebanese people are white or black or brown or whatever the case is. No, race is something entirely different and is on a case by case sort of basis, really. Tammy says the tricky issue is distinguishing the line between white versus white passing for people who are not predominantly ethnic European. Yeah, I've dealt with that, and I've had cops called on me by some white passing folks. You know who you are. And them folks definitely, it's that whiteness is they are black. They are just as much black as I am, technically, from a genetic standpoint. But certainly the skin tone that they get to operate in this world with allows them to be friendly to police in a way that I have never been able to be. And that's just something that we need to acknowledge. And so, yeah, I agree. Everyone, please, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share this video out with anyone that you think might like to hear the message that we have here. So get some more comments here. I think we are going to get to some more comments here. 1 second. Tammy just had a comment up. Okay. Tammy says, but if you're visibly not white / Eurocentric enough, you can't claim whiteness because society won't perceive you as such. Yeah. And I think that some people will try to use that. And I mean, Zaid Jilani got on he pointed out that like some Indian folks, Kamala Harris's mother had it down on her records that she was Caucasian Indian. Some South Asians will use Caucasian as an identifier. So but I think that a lot of people sort of want, to the black folks that are trying to run away from their blackness, you can't do it. You can't outrun your blackness. And that is something that you have to reconcile with too, is that, society perceives you this way. That's what you are. And you need to start accepting that as well. So I see a lot of that sort of, I'm almost certain that's the more common issue is, light folks that want to sort of move away from their blackness and use that to their advantage. And we've seen that. What's his name? The politician Powell. Forgetting his name, but he definitely did that. And he was able to, and he literally like admitted to doing it. He's kind of the playboy guy. He was a politician. Clayton Powell Jr. I think his name is Clayton Powell Jr. And, look him up, and he straight would talk about it. Like, hey, when I go out with my white friends, like I'm white, but he was, technically considered black dude. And, but he said it all the time. Like, no, when I'm out here, I'm white and and I will use that to my advantage. So Tammy says, but okay. Yeah. Any other comments, please, share. Let me just take a quick look at what oh, Tammy says, yeah. No, I'm just looking through my notes. Sorry. Tammy says, and a big issue with the census and whoever / whatever is in charge of collecting racial and ethnic data limits race options that are just not an accurate representation. Yeah. And that's what Zaid Jilani was kind of talking about there with that, folks being limited to that. Also Arab Americans formerly identifying as Caucasian, but now petitioning for a special, like a unique identifier to say Arab American. Listen, this is why, and he was right to say that like race is a social construct. And I agree with him on that. I also agree with him on the fluidity of race. Like we know that some people have gained whiteness over time in America. Like Jewish people were not considered white initially, and now they're considered white. Same for Irish and Italian people. They were not initially considered white people on first arriving, but they quickly realized that they could use whiteness to their advantage. If they accepted their whiteness, they could use that to their advantage. I say this as somebody with an Italian mother, in of Italian descent and Sicilian to be specific, it's, the Italians, the Irish, have slowly shifted away from their sort of roots and to adopting that whiteness and accepting that and using that to their advantage. And so, yeah, the race is certainly fluid. It is fluid in a more over time, you know, in space in a broader sense, not so much at a like micro level, but at a macro level for sure. Tammy says, like, if you're Latinx, you technically fall under white. Same with indigenous identities. There are no options for them. Yeah. Like they'll have like, they'll say like black, Hispanic, they'll ask you if you're Hispanic versus non-Hispanic, and then your race like separately, like black versus white. So I know they're like, there's some designation obviously for black and Hispanic, but often they will, and that falls under, you know, just general whiteness, when we obviously know there's a distinction there. Shin says, what about people who are transracial? What the hell is transracial? Is that a thing? Like, what is that? I don't know what that even means. I don't even know what that means. The actual term of transracial is for people who are adopted by a family of a different race than them, mostly about POC kids being adopted by white families. How the hell does that make you transracial? Dude, you're still your fucking race. You're still whatever race you are. You don't get to, you don't get to, yeah, like, I don't know. I can't speak on this because I've never heard of this. I've never heard of this idea of being transracial. Is that what like Rachel Dolezal consider themselves? Like,
She co-opted the term. It's different from this.
okay. So it's a different idea. I don't like that term. I don't like that term because it's this, you're saying you're crossing over races and you're crossing through races when you're not, just by being adopted into a white family. If you're saying like now there's the whole process that happened with like, you know, what they did to the indigenous people, where they like wouldn't let them, like they took away their children and had them like they like fostered them with white parents in order to like erase out culture. And they like, it was a way of doing like a, you know, ethnic genocide essentially. And that is certainly a way that they've tried to force like transraciality, I suppose. But I don't really believe that someone can be like start as one race and then transition into another race, if that's what you're referring to. I'll look that up. I'll try to understand that better and get a better idea about this idea of transracial. But I don't believe in that as of right now, because I don't know what it is. And so I don't know. I'm not well versed enough to say one way or another. But Sleepery22, new commenter. Shout out to Sleepery22. Thank you so much for the comment. Hope you stick around. Hope you've already subscribed, Sleepery. If you haven't already, please subscribe right now. And if you can afford it, support us on Patreon too. We really appreciate it. Sleepery22 says, this is a really complicated issue. I have a friend who looks white, but he claims he's part Native American and black. And I was like, yeah, sure. Until I met his mom, who's clearly a black woman. Yeah, no. And I say that like, it is a complicated issue. And there's also the idea of like, you know, when I talk about this, I'll often bring up the idea of like albinism. And sometimes you have a black person born with a condition of being albino, but they're born to black parents. They will produce black children. And they will have facial features of a black person, as we talked about earlier. And so I certainly recognize that person as a black person. I think that there are certain areas where it definitely blurs. But I do think, and I do respect the idea of somebody like, if you identify a certain way, like this is something that I've had to wrestle with the fact that like, if I have children with somebody that's not black, like if I have children with a white person, or somebody that's fully Asian or Latina or Latinx, then my child is going to only be like 1/4 black, and that's not something that I had thought through like early on in my life. I just always thought, oh, my children, I'll be able to relate with them on that level. I'm black. My children will be black. We'll live a shared experience, a similar experience that I can relate to them on. I'll be able to, have those talks with my kid, and I'll have to have those talks of, about, being, careful with your blackness and these sorts of things, and like being able to relate to my child in that way. And then realizing like, if I don't have a child with a black woman, then my child might, they're going to fall into a similar situation to the friend you just described, Sleepery, where it's like, they may very well identify as black, having a parent who is very clearly black, but if they are, if they're only a quarter black, a quarter, white, technically a quarter Italian, and then 50% something else, then they are more likely to be identified as that something else. And that's something that's really like a thing that I struggle with, because I don't know how to relate to my child in that way. And that's going to be a really scary thing for me as a parent if that happens. So something that I've wrestled with recently. And so I feel for your friend there, and it is a complicated issue. And I am not the gatekeeper of blackness. I am not the arbiter of blackness. I don't get to gatekeep that. But I do have some pretty strong opinions on this issue for sure. But I don't find myself to be a gatekeeper, or not feeling like I am, or trying to be that. Thank you so mumuch for the comment, Sleepery22. Really appreciate the comment. Thank you to everyone who participates in the chat. We really appreciate that. If folks can afford it, please do us a favor, support the show. Patreon.com/radical democracy. You see the thing scrolling down bottom, and you can see it right down below. Link is in the description box. We really just need your support. So even as low as $1 a month, the support is massive for us, because we are not corporate media. We do not have the backing of big advertisers, pharmaceutical industry, the fossil fuel industry. We are fighting a very difficult battle here against corporate media, and we need your support in order to win that battle. So independent media needs to win out in order to secure a strong democracy, because we see what happens. You saw what the mainstream media just did in these last elections and such. So just, recognize the power that they have and try to empower independent media by supporting us on Patreon. Or if you would like to leave us a one-time tip, please, it's in place of our the super chat feature. Until we can enable super chat, we have a Coffee where you can tip us at coffee.com/radical democracy. That's ko-fi.com/radical democracy. Link in the description box below as well. So please hit those links, go and contribute whatever you can. Literally $1 a month. It's not that much, folks. I know if you can't afford it, don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. We're not going to, totally understood. But if you can afford it, if you can afford it, please do it. Please do it. Do it now. Don't wait till later. You'll forget about it if you wait till later. Just do it right now while you're listening to me still. Open up another tab, click that link, open up that tab, support the show. And we will shout you out. We thank you so much. Sorry that we sometimes don't get the notifications from Patreon for a little bit, and we sometimes miss that on stream. So we've had it happen a few times where we've gotten a tip or gotten a donation on stream, but we don't get the notification till a little bit after. So you got to kind of forgive us for that. It's not our fault. We are trying our darndest there. So, all right. I think we're going to start to wind this down here. Do we have any more comments that we want to get to? Okay. Yep, we do. Awesome. Let's get to those. And we will, as always, please if you haven't already, you better hit that like button. It's the least you can do. You must do that while you're watching this. You have to hit that like button. I will accept nothing less than that right now. I'm not going to hit that like button right now, right there, down there. You see that right down there somewhere. Hit that like button. Tammy says with indigeneity, it's a little more unique because it's less about how you look, but about how connected you are to the culture, or a combo of the two, because blood quantum has been used against them. So they try to reinforce that colonized mindset. They try not, okay, to reinforce that colonized mindset. Sorry about that. So yeah, so I don't want to be, we all need to decolonize our minds for real. So decolonize your mind. All right. And yeah, Tammy says also race is subjective and has changed over time. In certain groups have moved in and out of whiteness over history, whereas gender has not changed as much with patriarchy. Yeah. Gender has always been fluid, and that's been with us for centuries, for just eons. It's like the beginning of time, really, like as far back as we can trace written history, oral history. We have cases of, two spirits people, and these are, gender has been has been fluid since the beginning of time. And so it's always, it's not changing because it's always been fluid. So And let's see. All right. I think that's all the comments we wanted to get to. Thank you so much to everyone for being here with us tonight. We really appreciate that. We had a lot to get to, and I think we were able to get to it all, which is really awesome and impressive. And I appreciate all the folks that we had in here chatting, commenting. Really appreciate that. Tomorrow, we have a very special episode. We are going to be doing live election results coverage for the Delaware primary from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern time. So that's tomorrow right here, wherever you're catching us right now. You can catch us again tomorrow, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. We're going to have Zach and Gavin on from the Vanguard and the Vanguard blog to discuss the race between Jessica Scarane and Chris Coons there. It's a very important race there. At least we believe so. And so we'll talk about that, why it's important, what are the chances for Jessica Scarane. We'll start the show about an hour before the polls close. So we'll talk to the Vanguard, Zach and Gavin from the Vanguard. We'll hear a little bit about their story and what they're working on there at the Vanguard. And then just chat to them about the election, and also get their thoughts on Nina Turner 2024 and third party versus Democratic Party reform. So I really look forward to having that discussion with them tomorrow. It's going to be a special episode. Some of our first, outside guests, non-communal guests, not outside of our community directly. So we had Steve Alvarez on our last episode, and we're going to have Zach and Gavin from the Vanguard on, and I'm really looking forward to that. So super excited for tomorrow's episode. Please join us for live election results coverage. Now, I will warn you in advance, the last time we did live election results, it was our busiest stream ever. I don't expect it to be quite as busy because the last election was the Massachusetts primary. There was the Senate race between Markey and Joe Kennedy, lots of name recognition with the Joe Kennedy important race, very important race, as well as some down ballot sort of stuff that was some congressional races. Alex Morris was running and Isan Leckie. And so we had a few races to sort of hone in on, and there was a lot of intrigue around those. A lot of, they got national attention from the Alex Morris story. And so with that political smear that they tried to run against him, you can check out our video on Alex Morris for more information on that. And so I don't expect it to be quite as busy for the Delaware primary, but I do expect it to be pretty busy in there. So the chat will be a little busier than usual. Of course, we will always give priority to comments from our Patreon community or our coffee tips. Of course, if you're a coffee supporter, if you're supporting the show financially, we will make sure that we highlight those comments, because it's the least we can do for you, literally giving the show the chance to succeed and exist. So all right, so we will, Shin says bye Shin, so glad to have you. Thank you so much for being here, Shin. Love all the comments, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for all the engaging chat today. I really had a blast talking to all of you, and it was some real enlightening stuff, so I appreciate that. So please join us again tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight, and tomorrow 7 p.m. And come and hear from myself, Zach, Gavin, and we might have on one other guest, but that's probably going to be it. Let's not get ahead of ourselves there. We won't force it. So thank you so much to everyone. I won't do what I usually do and take forever to shut the hell up and leave. So without any further ado, I don't see any other comments that we need to get to. All right. Thank you so much to everyone for the lively chat and for everything else. Please like, subscribe, and share if you're still listening to this and you haven't done so already. I don't know what is wrong with you, but you need to immediately hit the like button right now. Hit that like button and subscribe. Okay, please. You won't regret it. All right. We are so close to hitting our 4,000 hour mark on this channel and hitting monetization so we can get those super chats. We just crossed 1,100 subscribers on the channel. We are growing fast. Get in here with us on the ground floor. Support us here now. We really appreciate the early support. And shout out to Tammy for all the work that she did in this hot ass room, holding it down as the producer, just getting sweaty over there. Putting to work. All right. So, all right. Later, Mark. Later, everyone. Thank you so much. We can throw up that end screen or all right. Peace out, y'all.